Heavenly Father, today we put on the full armor to protect us against attack. We put on the belt of truth to protect against lies and deception. We put on the breastplate of righteousness to protect our hearts from the temptations. We put the gospel of peace on our feet to walk in your light, peace, and freedom with the Holy Spirit. We rebuke anxious thoughts. We take up your shield of faith for protection to block and destroy all the darts and threats thrown at us by the enemy. We put on the helmet of salvation to cover our minds and thoughts, reminding us that we are children of a mighty King. We are forgiven, set free, saved by the blood of Jesus. We take up the sword of the Spirit, your living word, that has the power to demolish strongholds and is sharper than any double-edged sword. We come to you, Lord, in prayer daily. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Beautiful.
What's up, you guys? Welcome to The Imagination. I'm your host, Emma, and today I'm so honored to have back on the show for a second time satanic ritual abuse, mind control, and organized abuse survivor, whistleblower, and overcomer, public speaker, podcaster, and podcast host, entrepreneur, business owner, and visionary, award-winning international human resource consultant and career coach, independent LifeWave distributor, marathoner, weightlifter, child of God, and an absolute badass I'm blessed to call my friend, Lynne Scott Haggerman. Born into a world that tested her resilience from infancy, Lynn endured harrowing experiences of trafficking and ritual abuse in environments that should have been sanctuaries, including underground facilities tied to institutions of power. Despite the profound trauma inflicted upon her, Lynn's spirit remained unbroken, guided by an unwavering faith in God and a deep well of inner strength. Her survival is a powerful reminder that light can emerge from even the most oppressive darkness. Lynn's path to healing was a courageous journey, requiring her to confront fragmented memories of her childhood with spiritual fortitude and relentless determination. Through years of dedicated work with a godly trauma therapist and techniques like EMDR, she rewired her mind, transforming her pain into purpose. Today, she stands as a multifaceted visionary, a public speaker, podcast host of the Lynne Scott Haggerman Show on Rumble and YouTube, award-winning international human resource consultant, career coach, independent LifeWave distributor, marathoner, weightlifter, and serial entrepreneur. Her creative outlets, from sound healing to business innovation, reflect her passion for uplifting others and fostering community. As a whistleblower, Lynn fearlessly exposes the realities of systemic abuse, sharing her story on other podcasts as well as her own show to spark critical conversations about trafficking and mind control. Her advocacy extends beyond personal healing to a broader mission of justice, offering hope to survivors and challenging society to confront uncomfortable truths. Through her website, qgrit.org, Lynn provides a wealth of resources for survivors, advocates, and anyone seeking to heal from trauma, alongside actionable steps to combat child trafficking and support the aftercare of rescued children. Her vision includes establishing wellness and transformation centers, long-term housing for survivors, and a global network to rebuild communities free from exploitation. Lynn's extraordinary gifts, honed through both divine endowment and the trials she endured, include heightened spiritual awareness, remote viewing, and an ability to connect with nature and the supernatural. She uses these incredible abilities to empower others, from commanding the weather to protecting communities to reading people with uncanny precision for her professional work as a human resource consultant. Her faith, rooted in a lifelong connection with God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, guides her mission, offering hope and practical tools for survivors to reclaim their agency. On today's episode, we will be discussing more about Lynn, including her abilities to see God, angels, demons, and heaven, her healing journey and how she did it, the miracles that have happened in her life, her spiritual abilities, and so much more. If you missed Lynn's incredible first episode on the show, I'll have it below in the show notes and highly encourage you guys to go watch it before or after this episode. Lynn is more than a survivor. She's a force of nature, a catalyst for change, and a symbol of hope for a world yearning for healing. Her life proclaims that no darkness is too great to overcome, no wound too deep to heal, and no dream is too bold to achieve. With every step, she paves the way for a future where every child is safe, every survivor is empowered, and every heart is ignited with purpose. Together, hand in hand, we will rise, heal, and build a brighter tomorrow because with Lynn leading the way, the light of hope will never fade. Before wrapping up the introduction of today's guest, I'd like to share just a couple quick reminders and updates. If you're interested in being a guest on the show, if you wanted to share any information privately with me, or if you were interested in submitting a written testimony to be featured in a Substack article, you can reach out to me via email at imagineabetterworld2020@gmail.com or standbysurvivors@protonmail.com. Additionally, I've teamed up with a couple of my favorite brands to offer you guys exclusive discount codes on products I love, such as Rife Technology frequency machines and CZTL's premium methylene blue. You can find all the relevant links and codes along with other resources down below in the show notes. I've also started up a new YouTube channel, and you can subscribe to me there at the handle at Imagination Podcast Official, and I'm now streaming new episode premieres from weekly. Turn your notifications on and join our loving community in the live chats every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday evenings. Thank you all on the other side of the screen wholeheartedly for helping to make the imagination the safest space on the internet for survivor, whistleblower, advocate, and educator disclosures. Your support means the absolute world to me and to every guest on this show. So you guys, without further ado, please help me in welcoming back today's guest of honor, voice for the voiceless, hero, walking miracle, survivor and anti-child abuse advocate, powerhouse warrioress, friend to the Holy Spirit, and a woman who speaks to honor the many children who did not survive and to be their voice, the one, the only, Lynne Scott Haggerman. Lynn, it is an honor to have you back on the show. Thank you for being here with us today.
You are amazing. You are one of the most beautiful souls I have ever met, Emma. Your introductions are the best introductions I ever get. Everyone does an amazing job, but you not only knock it out of the ballpark, I just think it keeps going and never lands. I mean, thank you for having me on. This is just such a blessing.
Love having you on. Your last episode inspired so many people. I loved all the uplifting comments I got and people who just felt that you were either a puzzle piece to their story and they felt less alone because of you. And so many others learned a lot from your story and were thanking you in the comments for your vulnerability to share. You know, you're giving people hope all the way around. And I love that we can talk about these really dark topics, but also come out the other side with a bright light blinding the darkness and wiping it away, you know, washing it away. So I'm really excited to have you back and to again give more people hope, help them feel less alone. And you know, this episode's going to be really important because we're going to sort of talk about your life on the other side of remembering and, you know, giving people who are listening, whether survivors or allies, tools to understand what survivors go through from somebody who has gone through all of it, you know, and came out the other side a bright light like you. So I'm really excited to talk about some of these topics today and thought maybe we'd start going back in your story to when you did remember what your life was and contending with that duality of, oh my gosh, everything I thought isn't true, you know, and wanted to see how that happened for you, what triggered your memories, if anything, and sort of go through that experience with you.
Oh, I think that's an awesome place to start. When I had the first repressed memory, it was in 2011, and I was in my home, sitting at my makeup table, just doing my thing. And all of a sudden, bam, just out of nowhere, it hit. And I remembered being in the crib, being assaulted. And when these repressed memories hit, all of your senses are engaged. So I could, the smells, the sights, the sounds, the words, everything. And I could see the young man's shirt. I could describe it today. You have a photographic memory when you remember. So I could describe exactly what the print was, exactly what the buttons look like. And I was probably, I mean, I was assaulted from the time I was born until I was 5 years old. And I was probably 6 months old at the time. And you feel it too. So all of the emotions, the physical sensations, all of it comes back. And when it did, it just comes back like a flood, and it dropped me to my knees in a puddle of emotional tears because it hit you with such a force and a shock out of the blue, something that you know is real, but you don't have any memory of it. So I just went, dropped to my knees, just dropped to my knees and emotional. So when that was over, I finished getting ready because it's someplace I had to be.
Oh my
And
God.
I was driving in the car and talking to the Lord about it because I was pretty upset with him for letting me remember that. Little did I know it was my very first one, of many, many. Well, I remembered 5% of my memories after I was little, but not this bad. And so I was driving down the road and I looked up, which is always a good thing to do, and when you're in trouble. And there was this giant billboard and it said, "It's never too late." That's all it said. And so I knew that was the Lord. He can speak in all kinds of ways. He speaks to me in all kinds of ways. And that was him telling me, Lynn, it's okay. This didn't, I mean, God knew that that was coming and it's okay. So then I knew, okay, here we go. And again, little did I know that that was my first memory, but that was the very first one. And then I've had them ever since, and I continue to. It doesn't stop.
Oh my gosh. And whenever you were going through that, was that something that you believed automatically? Did you know that that was a memory, or was it so shocking that you were questioning yourself?
No, I knew for sure it was true because you can't pretend memory, if that's a phrase. You can't pretend to make something up. And it's as I continue to remember to this day a couple of things. First of all, my therapist has taught me that it's impossible to have memories that don't exist. And she said one way to compare that is when I hear other survivor stories, like my best friend, her ex-husband would put a gun to their 2-year-old's head before he would rape her.
Oh,
And I know. And when I heard that story, I was telling my therapist, and she said, "Now that story, Lynn, did you believe that happened to you?" And I said, "No, because I don't have a memory of that." And she said, "That's right." She said, "You cannot pretend and fake these memories. They are in you." And then the other thing is God's so good about every time I'll have one of these are horrific memories. In the beginning, I would question, I heard my therapist, but me, myself, I was like, surely people don't do that to children. Surely this is not real. And so I would, fight it. And I've since learned your healing is much faster if you're aware. This is an Al-Anon phrase. I was in Al-Anon 5 years. Aware, accept, act. So once you become aware of it, the faster you just accept it and do something about it, the faster you'll heal. But in the beginning, I would fight it because it was all so horrific. But God was so good, and within 24 hours, He would show me something here in the physical world that was exactly what I remembered somewhere. I would see it, and it would be His way of saying, "It's okay, Lynn. This stuff is like pus in a wound. It has to come out." And frankly, I want my memories. They're mine, and I want them back. And it's what makes me whole. And every time I remember, as hard as it is, I become better and better and better because I have my therapist to process out the trauma. Now, if I was doing this on my own, I'm not sure what that would be like. And I never go into these memories alone. I'm always with the Lord in my Bible study and prayer time, or I don't go there, and or I'm with my therapist because they're too dark and they're too bad. And I wouldn't be able to function if I did that.
one of the things that you mentioned that I sometimes get comments on my video and thought maybe you could shed a light on it is the photographic memory part. Some people have a hard time believing that anybody could remember a memory so early in life, or even if it's maybe just a little bit later in childhood, that they can remember so many details. But photographic memory is another thing that we're not really taught when, we learn about trauma in traditional academia. And I wanted to get your insights on that. Maybe you could explain a little bit more about what that is.
I hear that too, that people don't remember when they're little. And so the first thing that I go to is who are the people that are saying that? And there are a lot of people who are trying to, that they're on the bad side and they're trying to spin narratives that this didn't happen to cover up all of the abuse that is happening. And so part of this is, it's like that phrase that came about when this was coming out in the 70s and 80s. There was that phrase, it wasn't called a fake memory, but there was a more professional phrase that they put to it. But the assumption that what the Psychological Association, the American Psychological Association, the APA, what they were trying to say was that people could have false memories that weren't real. Well, that was false and a lie from the pits of hell, because people do not have false memories. They have their memories, you know. And I believe part of that is a disinformation and misinformation so that we doubt ourselves. But we absolutely, statistically, we only use 10% of our brain. So there's 90% of stuff up there that we're not even tapping into. I believe that we have entered the age of awakening, the golden age. There's a lot of different words for it, but I believe that we're going to come to learn more and more and more of that brain. I know I have, with all of the supernatural things that happen in my life. And I believe this is how we were meant to live. And I believe we were meant to remember our past, our childhood. I remember coming from the Lord. I remember being in the womb. I'm not sure if we talked about that last time, but I most certainly do. And I remember when I'm little, and part of that, it was an awful, horrific, unspeakable thing to have to survive as a child and go through. But I'm here to tell you on the other side, I have knowledge and gifts and talents and abilities that I would never have had. Now, I wouldn't have chosen my childhood, but because I had it, I have all of these gifts. So we do have photographic memory. I believe any person can go into their mind and remember as far back as they want to. If they have, now in my case, I need some help, and the body memories and the triggers will do it, but it's definitely there. It's just a question of moving forward. How, if someone wants to remember, how will we do that without trauma?
Yes, and I think another thing too that I try to explain to people when they're not doubting, but even people like genuinely want to know, oh my gosh, I don't remember anything. Like, how did they remember that memory so clear? Some people say it in a really positive way too. They just can't wrap their mind around it because their childhood to them is so fuzzy, because they probably didn't go through a lot of trauma. But if you think about, say, an example like 9/11, like if you ask anybody about that event or somebody who may have been, went through the JFK assassination, something really major that happened in the world, or even just any type of trauma that they had in their life, most people can remember those events very, very vividly. They do remember exactly where they were at. They remember what they were doing. They remember how they felt whenever they got the news of that. Trauma just stores differently in our memory. And I think people that didn't go through a lot of trauma have a hard time understanding that when a child, especially because they're like little sponges, they are so perceptive to everything and just soaking everything in. So you add trauma to that developmental phase where their brain is still developing and they're just soaking everything in, and you think about what that information looks like going in, it's just like a brand new phone, almost like taking our data, the most upgraded type of technology. Like, they can just soak everything in and they're trying to process it. And I'm sure when, given all those different circumstances, children are probably the absolute best at storing memory and compartmentalizing it in exact details, especially because they don't have context to it. All that they can do to try to contextualize it is pick out details and say, oh my gosh, this is happening. And then I see this color, this person's wearing this type of shirt. This is what I smell. They don't have like the contextualization or even the verbiage to explain it. They just are taking in the information that is around them.
Your explanation's awesome. That should be written up somewhere. I swear, Emma. That's amazing. People need to repeat that. When you were talking about that, and I do believe people can relate to trauma as an adult, like car accidents. Unfortunately, most of the listeners have probably been in one. And after a car accident, if you see it coming, if you don't, you don't have a memory of it, of course, because you didn't see it. But if you see it coming, it goes in slow motion. People will talk about that everything just goes in time goes slow, and you remember every little detail of everything coming at you, and it's like time is suspended. That's trauma. And you remember, like you said, what you feel, the details of what you saw, smells, sensation. It's the same, except with my trauma, it was 24/7 for 5 years. And so that's why it's so extensive and there's so many memories. And meet Gracie. I'm sure everyone met Gracie.
We loved her last time. Hi, Gracie.
She loves these shows because I'm a captive audience, so she can have nonstop pets. So that's how it works in my house.
Love it. And the car accident too is a great example. I was in a pretty bad car accident years and years and years ago. And although I don't think about it often now, there'll be sometimes I'm just driving and I get like a flash of it going, like sort of being in the same type of situation that I was in whenever it happened. And
Yes,
so you get like these little flashbacks, and all of a sudden it's like a moment of panic, and you all of a sudden remember like everything, all the information just like hits you. And
yes.
it's like a momentary, moment of PTSD. And then it's like, wow, where did that come from? I got to brush that off. But I mean, people that didn't go through what you did have to understand that like they experience it on different levels too, the same exact thing. It's just not as pronounced because they may not have gone through the extreme type of trauma that somebody like you did.
Exactly. And what you just described is someone that me would call a trigger. So you're going about your daily business, doing your thing, shopping, driving, whatever, and all of a sudden there's a sight, there's a smell, there's a sound, but something hits your mind and sorry, Gracie, that disturbed her when I snapped my fingers. Something hits your mind and it goes back into that tracing, it goes back into the circuit in your brain to that trauma and you start reliving it. So that is a trauma trigger.
I know a lot of survivors go through that. And like I said, I didn't even go through what you did. And even in my own way, I come across triggers once in a while. How do you manage that? And what strategies have you found to deal with that, especially when that happens in, say, public or somewhere where you're around people and you can't just, fall to your knees and, be super emotional. You have to kind of like keep going.
So I think this is a good segue into talking about the triggers and the body memories,
Yes.
processing that out because it's all tied together. And I wrote down just several examples to help people understand what we go through. One of them, so my day job, I'm an international human resource consultant. And one of the things that I do is I fill jobs for companies. So one day I was at a client's business and we were I had screened candidates for a job opening and went in to do second interviews. And the director, the person in charge of the whole organization, was there to do interviews with me. She'd become a friend by then. And I was just going to do my job. When she walked in the room, something had just happened that upset her. And she started talking to me in a very direct tone of voice, appropriate for the conversation. She was explaining to me something that just happened with someone else that she didn't like. But for whatever reason, the tone of voice triggered back to the trauma when someone spoke to me in a tone that was, so she was not speaking at me. She was just speaking in general about something that just happened. But that tone of voice hit the little girl part of me and it went straight somewhere. If you can imagine like electrical wiring throughout your house and a spark hits and it flashes through the whole electrical system until it finds a source. That's what it's like. So when I heard that tone of voice, I have no control over this. You have absolutely no control over this. It hit like a spark, went through all my electrical wiring and landed on some trauma that I had before where someone spoke to me that way and then something unspeakable happened afterward. Well, here I am in the middle of this. I had people from all over the world getting ready to Zoom in, conferences. It was a high level job. So I had to function, but I could tell that this trauma had hit me. And then what happened next is a body memory. Body memories, I was sharing before we hit record that my therapist will say that 80% of all long-term physical disabilities are actually body memories, 80%. And if I did not have my therapist and the EMDR, I still say is the number one technique. It's what helped me and still does. I would be a quadriplegic, a blind, deaf quadriplegic, frankly, if it was not for my therapist helping me process out this trauma because it feels very real. And if you did not know that you were experiencing, people might call it a flashback. I think you might have used that word, a flashback. People might relate to that. If you don't know, then you're going to seek medical help where they're going to really hurt your body because there's nothing wrong with you. So in this case, what happened to me, I lost 80% of my hearing just like that, 80%. And the reason for that was I didn't want to, whatever memory had been triggered, which I couldn't remember what happened yet, but whatever did happen was something that I didn't want to hear.
Wow.
So it could have been like they used to do dental work without anesthesia. They would drill on your, anyway. Um, so whatever it was, I didn't want to hear, but now I'm in this adult professional interaction, and all she did was just telling me that she was upset about something somebody else did. So again, you can't control it. Well, I had a job to do. I was going to be there for hours. What I did was I knew that was not real. So first you have to assess. And in my world, this is what I do. I have to like do a three-step process when something like this hits because this does not happen. It used to happen several times a day, but as I've healed more and more over the years, it may happen once a day, and maybe not. So maybe once every 2 days is good, which is astounding, a miracle. But the first thing I have to do is decide if it's a demonic attack. That's number one. Because whenever I was little, there were demons everywhere. I saw them. Every evil person has a demon, and even good people can have demons. They're just everywhere, and just like angels are everywhere. And in any time you see someone saying harmful words to someone else, not being kind, if you could see them, there's a demon telling them what to do and what to say because it's not. They're not good love beings. There's love, and then there's not love in the demons. So I get attacked a lot, and other people do too. They just don't know it. They just don't see it. So that was the first thing I did was I will bind demons and command them to, and there's a prayers I say, command them to leave me, and they have to go because we have power, dominion, and authority over them. That's very scriptural, and we do. They're a defeated foe. Jesus defeated them on the cross, and we have power, dominion, authority over them. So first I will get rid of them. And sometimes that works. And when that's the problem, my hearing would be restored 100%. It would just be over.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's step one. That's step one. And that could be for anyone listening. They don't have to be a trauma survivor. We live in a world, sorry, my allergies kicked in because I've been outside. So it could be anyone. So that's step one. Step two is because of my childhood and the parts that developed to help me survive, there is a part of me who when that part gets afraid, will try to harm me, to control me, thinking that, how do I describe this so people understand? Um, uh, there's a child part in me who thinks that I'm doing something to put her in danger. And so she'll try to take over to control what I do, thinking that she's protecting her and me. But of course, the child part of me is anywhere from 5 years old to birth. So this is not helpful in an adult situation at all. And so the second thing I'll do, so if binding a demon doesn't stop it, I'll talk to the child part of me. And we had a discussion last time, the last show, how everybody has child parts. It's just they aren't aware of them like I am. So anytime anyone in your audience, trauma or no, has an over-the-top emotional reaction or does something that's very childish, they know it's childish, but they do it anyway, that's because they have triggered and the little child in them is scared of something and trying to take over instead of letting the adult do it. So it's just, I'm fully aware of what's happening and people without trauma aren't. So then I will go to that part of me to try to soothe, calm down, see what's wrong, reassure, we're not there anymore. We're not in the trauma anymore. We're here today. It's okay. I'm an adult. I can take care. So I'll do self-soothing. And if it's the little one in me, that will work unless that part of me is so terrified that I can't control it and I need EMDR to reach deeper to get to her. And then the third thing is it a repressed memory that needs to come out? Is it time? Is it something that happened to me in the past that I've not remembered yet, and it's time? And God has told me that anytime there is a trigger, it is His signal that it's okay, Lynn. There's another memory, and you can handle it. And here it comes. So it could be any of those. So I go through the list. But in the meantime, while I'm trying to do these things, I'm in a meeting, you know, and I've got adults everywhere and I've got interviews to do, and I'm trying to do this in my mind. And so I was not able, there was too much happening. I wasn't home alone. I wasn't with my therapist, although this rarely happens while I'm with her, it's before. So I had to proceed, and I couldn't hear. So I had to focus really, really. I mean, I had to focus, and sometimes, you know, I had a whole appreciation of people who are hearing impaired when they try to order, you know, from a menu at a restaurant, they can't hear. So I would try to watch lips, I'd try to watch nonverbals, and thankfully, most of my role was to observe because I'd done my work to get the top candidates to them, but it wasn't easy. And that was a 4 hour meeting where I was hearing impaired, losing 80%. If I would not have known the, is it demonic? Is it the little girl part of me that somehow got scared here? Or is it a trigger and a body memory? If I would not have known that, my next step would be to probably stop the meeting and say, I have to get to urgent care. I've lost 80% of my hearing. Something is seriously wrong. I have to go. Then I would have gone to urgent care. And this is why they call the Western healthcare a practice, because they're practicing on you. And so I will tell them symptoms, and they have an AI, and the AI software says, if Lynn says she has these symptoms, here's all the tests we're going to run and all the money we're going to make on each test, and here's what you're going to do, and here's the protocol. And off we would have went. Tons of medical procedures, tons of stuff stuck in my body, lots of medicine with horrific side effects. And then none of that would have worked because it's a body memory. So then they would have talked surgery, because the only thing Western medicine knows is give them a pill, cut it out. Those are their two options. So next I would be in surgery. And this is why I say I would be a blind, deaf, quadriplegic, and I do not exaggerate, if I did not understand this whole process. I've lived this since 2011. I'm not a therapist, but I swear sometimes I might think I could be. Uh, so I did not panic, and I did not call a doctor. Now I'm going to tell you stories in the past where I have, and the harm I've done to myself from doing it. But instead, I knew what it was. And by the time the meeting was over, my uh, I was too far gone. There's an old, this is a super old movie. Before I started speaking, I tried to, I was always asking the Lord, give me things to help people understand, movies or something to help people understand so I can explain what happens, you know, to these little children. And there's an old movie, Kirk Russell was in it, and Drew Barrymore, called The Firestarter.
Mm.
And Drew Barrymore was probably 4 years old or 5 years old. She was, I mean, this is old. But Firestarter, what the movie was about was, she was in an experiment. So they always tell you what they're going to do, frankly, before they do it. She was in a government experimentation program where they learned she had a special gift to be able to start fires, or maybe they taught her how to with her mind. And she was able to, but when she got scared because she was little, she could catch people and all kinds of things on fire just by focusing. And once she started a fire, she couldn't pull it back. There was no way to, because she was too little. So in my body memories, once the child part of me starts a body memory, when they get big, like 80% being deaf, my mind, I cannot pull it back. It's done. It's out there. I can't pull it back. I need help to do that. And that's where my trauma therapist comes in through EMDR. So then the next time I could see her, and I see her a minimum of once a week and sometimes twice a week. And I have since, well, for the trauma since 2011. And then I'll go and we'll process it out through EMDR. I'll remember whatever happened to me. And it was a memory where horrific sounds were part of the trauma, and I didn't want to hear it. So I learned, you know, when you're little, part of your survival technique is not feeling, seeing, hearing, um, and you just learn not to. And so that's what I did. And once the memory is processed out through EMDR therapy, and normally it just takes one session, which is why I love this. If they're really bad, it can take a few sessions, but still not that many. And then I can hear again. So in her, once I remembered and we processed out the trauma by me remembering, my hearing fully came back 100%.
Oh my goodness. Those are some of the most incredible things to me is hearing the supernatural aspect of how we experience remembering trauma and how our bodies can literally, no matter how many years ago it was, if we're experiencing and reliving a memory that was repressed, it can appear in so many ways in the body, whether that is hearing loss, whether that's welts coming up on the body, whether that's tumors that show up, whether that's blindness, like you said, or allergies or autoimmune disease, all these different sort of minor and major conditions can come up. And like you said, and that is just so shocking to me that your therapist said 80%. So if we just look at our own body and everything that could possibly be hurting or all the things that we've experienced, and just consider that 80% of all the stuff that any of us suffer through is completely treatable by healing memory and trauma versus being put on a pill or getting surgery or taking the Western model. That is just absolutely incredible to think about. And there's probably a big reason why they don't want us to know that because 80% of their money wouldn't be filtered into that system if we knew that only 20% of the time, most likely we'd have to actually get some type of professional intervention and help to help us cope with whatever it is that we're going through.
That's right. That is why they call it a practice, because they are practicing and they're doing things based upon symptoms and using AI to do it. I uh, there's I can tell a couple more stories if you want to, unless you want to go on to something else. Is that
Absolutely, yeah, let's hear it.
help people understand? Because it can be anything. Starting so teeth. I have ended up with, I think I have 6 root canals that I've never needed because there was nothing wrong with me. So this is how, if you don't understand this, how you'll harm your body because the only thing that we're taught being in the matrix is to go to a white coat as opposed to, praying, asking God what he would have you do, and following the Lord with whatever path that is. It started many years ago in August. As a marathoner, I'm out running all the time. And I remember one August I was out, so you're inhaling mass quantities of air, and I was out running, and one of my teeth just, oh, the zing, just a sharp pain when you have a tooth pain, and it's always, and so this was when I was just starting to have repressed memories, and my therapist had just begun learning EMDR. So this was new to both of us. And EMDR is not that old of a technique. And I went to a dentist because my tooth hurt. So this again is your go-to. And the dentist looked and looked and looked, could find no physical cause for that pain because it was a body memory. But in our Western healthcare, even if they can't find a cause, we've all been there, that's when all the medical tests start to try to find a cause. And in the end, they couldn't find a cause, but I was like, I'm in all this pain, all this pain. The dental practice, their only go-to is root canal or pull the tooth. That's their go-to. And the tooth, there was nothing wrong with the tooth. They could see that. And so the go-to was the root canal. So I got a root canal. That was one August. And what started happening then was for the next 5 years, around every August, I would need a root canal. So I have root canals all over here. And one August it hit again, but by that time I'd had enough EMDR underneath my belt, enough therapy, enough because I'm sure the vast majority of our audience, this is all news to them too. So it takes some time to kind of wrap your mind around it and realize what's happening and not go to that knee-jerk white coat, look outside of ourselves to someone else tell us what's wrong with our bodies. And So I was getting ready for like root canal number 6 or maybe number 7. I've had a lot. And I happened to be with my therapist, and I just started telling her how, my tooth hurts. Well, by that time, um, we'd both learned, and I knew it could be a body memory, but I didn't go there because these feel real. They feel absolutely real, and my mind didn't go there. And this again was many years ago. And she looked at me and she said, "Did you say these are happening every August?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "Lynn, the weather gets cool in August, the end of August. There'll be days where, fall's starting to come a bit." And she said, "This can't be that every August you have a tooth problem in a different tooth in the same part of your, this isn't normal. There's nothing normal about this." So we did EMDR on it, and sure enough, what it actually was a couple things. Part of the torture was to put ice cubes in my mouth and put me in front of a fan, and that is painful. I mean, I just have to say that's painful. Or I would have to put my head in a freezer with my mouth open and inhale deeply, and that hurts really bad too. And so to remember that trauma, so I was having body memories, the natural cool air, just so I'm just running along. I'm a marathoner, I run outside, air's getting cooler, you inhale deeply, it's a little bit cooler. It doesn't hurt. I mean, a normal person, it doesn't hurt, in air quotes. It's just a different temperature of air, and it warms by the time it enters your mouth. So there's never a pain when someone's outside, even when it's super cold. And that was pure body memory. And so, praise God, that time we did EMDR therapy on the tooth that was hurting. And after that one session, the pain stopped. And I never had another root canal since. That is the problem with triggers and repressed memories and body memories, is that I really recommend people be very, very careful when they have a physical problem. And first, it could be a demonic attack, and second, if you're not a trauma survivor, it could just be there was a person, she was telling me, that had was in a car accident, and her husband died in the accident, and
Oh.
she lost the ability to use a leg. And it was because the leg was hitting the brake at the time of the accident, and all the trauma went into the leg. And so they were getting ready to do all kinds of surgeries and things, and it was just trauma. And she was able to process it out with EMDR. So it's not just, you know, childhood trauma. It's trauma is trauma is trauma.
And I think that you said something really key there, that the pain felt so real. It wasn't just something that you were thinking in your head and recalling as some visual, almost like a daydream. This was a memory that actually manifested in your body and literally felt like you had some type of a disability in that moment. That, oh my gosh, my tooth hurts so bad. I need to go to the dentist. There's something really wrong with me. And so I hope that for people listening too, that they caught that and can think about remembering something in that way, that not all memory is experienced just as kind of a daydream type thought in your mind, that it can drop anywhere in your body and you can actually feel exactly what you felt in the moment that it happened to you, no matter what timeline that was, as a child or teenager, or whenever that trauma happened.
Yes. And the mind and the body are capable of so much. I mentioned one day I was just walking down my hallway, and I went blind in one eye, just blind. And and I'll tell you, God is so good. He is so good. He gives me heads up so I don't have complete meltdowns like a human maybe would. The night before, I had happened to see I love old movies because I can get triggered easily. I can't watch most commercials because most of them are sexualized and very triggering. And I can't watch hardly any current shows or any current movies. There's just too much trauma and violence and triggers, that they're open portals for demons too. So I have to be really careful. So old black and whites, the right ones can be safe. So that's why you'll hear me talk about old movies too. So there's an old Helen Keller movie, who is a famous woman who was blind and then went on to become famous. I was watching an old Helen Keller movie, and the ne so the next day whenever I lost sight of one of my eyes, it didn't scare me as bad as it might initially because I knew the Lord was giving me a forewarning because I hadn't watched that movie in forever. And I knew he was, but there it was on TV. I knew it was safe. I watched it. So he was giving me a forewarning. So when it happened, I thought, okay. And instead, and I kept the little girl in me calm by just pretending, to walk like the Helen Keller movie and try to make a joke out of it because I knew things could go downhill really, really quick if the child part of me got scared. And anyone listening without trauma, they'll know that too. If you instantly go blind in one eye, probably the child in you is going to start freaking out. The freaking out is not the adult in us. That's the child part of us that's freaking out that something's wrong. But I knew it had to be a body memory. And so I just couldn't see, thank God the next day I had an appointment with my therapist and we processed out the memory and then I could see, so I mean I was blind and then I could see after that one session. But that's what this is like. And if I didn't know, I would have been in an emergency room set for hours, right? They would have ran tests. They would have found nothing wrong because nothing was wrong. But I would be saying, but I'm blind, but I'm blind, but I'm blind. You have to find something. I would be freaking everyone out. They'd be freaking out. Why is she blind? I'd be in surgery before I know it, right? Because most people would just freak out scared. So maintain your calmness, everybody, when something happens, because you never know. Um, One day I was at a giant event and I walked past a woman that was super angry and I wasn't, this was years ago, so I wasn't as aware and fully trained and knowledgeable now about how to handle demons. I walked too close to her and the thing stuck on me, but I didn't know it. It didn't go in me. They stick on you. They can move from person to person. And after that, I thought I was going to have a heart attack, literally. And I went in a room and I thought, you're going to ruin this party. You're going to have to call an ambulance, Lynn. You're having a heart attack. Quit messing with this. But I didn't want to call an ambulance. I didn't want to make a scene, but it was getting worse. And I sat there for 5 minutes and then I thought, wait, I'm a marathoner. I'm not having a heart attack. I'm not having a heart attack. And so then I started binding demons, and within 2 minutes it was gone and over because it wasn't a heart attack. So and I'm not giving medical advice to anybody either. I don't want to unintentionally harm someone, but I am saying between the demons and trauma backgrounds, um, uh, quite a bit of this I don't think's real. And then Western medicine gets a hold of us and they do more harm. So eat like the root canals. Anytime before I learned this, that I would go seek, and it's not like Western medicine and the dentists were trying to hurt me. They were reacting based on what symptoms. You give them symptoms and AI tells them what to do. And based on my symptoms and my level of, you've got to fix this, my tooth, it hurts, it's killing me, you've got to do something, then they're going to react when nothing is wrong. And our bodies get harmed more and more and more.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, you think about if you wouldn't have intervened on your own health and been your own advocate, you could literally, they could have done a surgery on your eyes for no reason, and you could literally have been blind, you know,
Yes,
and just to think that like you could have instead just gone home or talked to your therapist or did EMDR and it could have been solved in one day. And you think about all the people who don't know how to be their own advocate, who are stuck in that brainwashed model of you must rely on outside help to have the agency over your body, over yourself. And you think about how many people are getting surgeries and getting injured and just pretty much, ripping off the side effect from the body, trying to and like putting a band-aid on it and like never getting to the root cause of what actually happened.
yes. And just a couple of interesting tidbits because I love your show, and I know we all just get to talk about anything we want to, and it's a very safe place to do it. Whereas most shows you might have to hold back a bit. But so while we've been talking, um, my left, the same eye that went blind, it's going somewhat getting harder to see in this eye as I speak.
Really?
Yeah, and it's not the going blind. So on the not being able to see scale, 1 to 10, I'm blind. It's like a 0.01. So that's nothing big. But I am saying that trauma stays in the body, and even when you process out a body memory, it can come back. And I have learned from these years of working with my therapist about this topic that there are what's called feeder memories, where you might remember the first thing, but then once that memory is opened, then several more will open up, and there's more along the same line. So what this tells me is that because I'm talking about that one trauma memory, I mean, it's in my mind, I haven't talked about it, but that tells me that there's still a bit more there to process out, and that's okay. So what I'll do is this will be like this until I see her tomorrow, and we'll just process out, and I'll remember the rest, and it will be fine. And I also want you to notice that I'm not clearing my throat anymore. And if I had allergies, I would still be clearing my throat. And so that was my first go-to. Allergies are a mild thing to try to, but since it stopped, that means, and I can't remember what we were talking about when it kicked in, but that would be like the little girl part of me trying to stop me a bit from saying whatever it was I was saying. Um, but I, as much as the little girl part of me loves when I speak, still, this is my world. I just, the purpose of today's conversation is to help people understand what this is like as an adult to deal with these things. And I am well along my healing path, but there's still, things that happen to me throughout the day, these little things here and there, or big things that I have to manage and take care of. And it's part of this.
Now, for a memory like what you're talking about, these very, very traumatic memories from experiencing extreme trauma, you've mentioned the different sensory components to it, from physical to all of the internal ways that you can experience that. Can a person who's remembering trauma in this way black out in a sense where they sort of don't see their surroundings where they're at and they completely internalize the memory and actually see that in front of them fully and have be sort of, you know what I'm saying, kind of like sucked into that and lose sort of the conscious comprehension of their actual surroundings?
The answer is yes. And the only time, so for me, that is very mild. There have been, and I can count on one hand since I've been remembering, I'm trying to think, where I'll get a trigger of something, anything, it could be absolutely doorknob, could be anything. And whatever memory is about ready to come out is so bad that I'll start feeling that a blackout sensation, that I'm gonna leave, I'm gonna be gone sensation, but it only lasts for a few seconds, like 2, 3, 4 seconds, and it stops. Now, people with DID, which is dissociative disorder, used to be called multiple personalities, and they switched it to DID. People with multiple personality, because it's easier to me for people to understand the phrase multiple personalities. So people with multiple personalities, they literally will, one part of them ceases to exist and another part will come forward and function in their life. And they have multiple uh, people, and they don't know each other. So they'll have in their clothes closet multiple sets of clothes, because depending upon who is the person interacting in public, they will dress differently, their hair will be different, and one person will not remember what the other person does. That is a total blackout, where the first one will black out and another one will come out and could be out for days or months or weeks. That's when people will wake up sometimes in a completely different life, or a completely different state, or a completely different job. As a human resource consultant, I remember a time where we had a multiple personality employee and didn't know it, but she was employed at 2 different locations and would come to each job as a different, but no one knew it. It was astounding. And so that when you talk about like the blackout, that's more when someone has been harmed so um, in such a way that that's how their mind had to deal with it.
Yeah, because you think about again, how ill trauma informed society is, and that we're expecting so much from trauma survivors who could literally be doing something and like dissociate into a memory fully and not even be able to function because their literal surroundings around them, their environment that they're actually in, sort of disappears from their consciousness. And all of a sudden, all their sensory output, all of their energy, everything that they see, touch, feel, even, how you were saying, manifestations through the body, the pain and everything that they were feeling, thinking about how overwhelming that is and that we just expect survivors to just function, 24 hours a day and to just stuff that down, go to work 40 hours a week or however long, and have like no sympathy for them. And how therapists are so ill-informed on this, how somebody could see a person going into a memory like this and immediately send them to a psych ward or misunderstand it as a mental disorder instead of like a response to trauma. And it's just really sad to even think about how, on that end, how we can be so negligent on how we're supporting people who are literally going through such horrors, and experiencing just the most inhumane crimes against humanity, reliving that, and we're sitting there, you need to go to a mental institution, there's something wrong with you, or you're fired, you can't work here because I don't know, I don't understand what you're doing, you look like you're going crazy, and you just think about like how sad it is that we isolate survivors so much from being able to actually heal with a support system because we don't understand what they're going through and like how that can look.
That's true. And the first place my heart goes is to the survivor. And it's been my experience that most survivors don't know what's happening to themselves either.
Yeah.
They may not have their memories back or their full memories, or they don't have help, they don't understand. And when that happens, for example, at work, they will willingly go to a psych ward because they do not know what else to do with themselves. That's part of the sadness. Anyone listening, if it's happened to you at work where you've lost your job for this, what I want to encourage you to do is, if you'd like some help, reach out to me at the qgrit.org website. There's an email contact. And my day job, I'm a human resource consultant. I can tell you, because that's illegal, I can tell you the legal agencies to contact. It's illegal under the Americans with Disabilities Act. And you can go to their website, probably ada.gov possibly, and you can file a complaint if you've been terminated, because that's illegal, because this any physical and mental disabilities are covered under the ADA and you have legal protections. That's another thing. Also, I would encourage survivors not to go into long-term care institutions. I had a friend of mine in a survivor group who had her family, not her. She didn't want to do this. So again, stay with yourself. Think, go inside yourself and seek the Lord about what He would have you do. I would not seek others, because um, most people that are family will give you advice based on what protects them and has nothing to do with you. So she went into a long-term care facility where they drugged her heavily, and she came out telling me that everything she remembered was she made it up, and that none of it was true, and she was schizophrenic, they told her, and they gave her all this medicine, and now she's forgetting all of the memories because they weren't true anyway. And that is called brainwashing. And I felt really sorry for her. Her family was happy. She was miserable because she wasn't who she really is. She'll never be able to process out that trauma if she doesn't get off those meds. When it comes to therapists, the vast majority cannot handle this SRA, none of it, because they have not received training. And my therapist told me, whenever we first started processing out the memories, she taught me that it is impossible for me to make up memories, that your brain just can't do that. And it can't. And so she said, though, that if any other therapist that she knew would have been my therapist, that they would have recommended that I be committed, just like that friend of mine was, to because it's the only tool that they know. It's like going to a dentist for a root canal when your tooth hurts when it's a body memory, or going to the emergency room when you can't see. It's the same thing, but with mental illness. They don't know what to do with us, and their only go-to is drug them out of their mind. And these drugs are capable of making you forget who you are and becoming like anyone who's been on these drugs, they'll tell you they have no motivation, they have no drive, they have no thoughts, they have no feelings. It just takes the real them out. And our therapists aren't trained, the majority of them, to handle this, except EMDR, except EMDR.
Which is really sad because that's one of the first places most survivors want to go who realize that they're survivors. They want to go to a church. They're usually not welcome there. They want to go to a therapist. Most therapists can't, like, therapists get PTSD from hearing this stuff, and it's too much for them. And it's just such a disservice how we've blocked this information so heavily from the public, especially people who genuinely are getting into different professions and different institutions because they genuinely do want to help. And then whenever they're confronted with people who they could help, it's too much for them because, like you said, the institutions they're not empowering them with this information. They're suppressing it from them.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. And we were talking before the show. I was finding, so there are some churches who, and I, wherever there can be help, I am all for it. And I'm currently searching for all kinds of valid places to recommend people go for help. And the churches will offer deliverance ministries for the most part. And there's some types of like similar EMDR therapies in some churches. It's a little bit different. And so I've been trying to look into this. And I ended up at a website for a church that helps with trauma, but really big and bold at the top of that page, they said, we do not do DID or SRA. And I found that great because I thought the conversation is at least being had. People with DID and SRA are seeking help, and clearly they're going to churches, and this church helps with trauma, praise God. But they realized DID and SRA was too much for them because that is a whole other level of trauma. And I found it refreshing that there it is, like big and bold at the top of a We Help Trauma page at a church website. And then I found the church I was looking for that does help with the DID and the SRA, which I can't remember off the top of my mind right now, but I'm sure I'll find it again. But that I think there's hope there
Yeah.
because that means that the conversation's being had, people are seeking help, and organizations are differentiating between we can help this type of trauma, we are ill-equipped to help this type of trauma, because the last thing we want to do is send someone to an organization for help and they make it worse.
And they're legitimizing that it exists, where before it's you're a conspiracy theorist or you're lying, satanic ritual abuse is false. Well, now it's actually on signs, the actual words. It's not sugar coated, it's not labeled something else. It is specifically SRA, which is huge that they're saying this does exist. We know it does, but we can't help you if you've gone through that. We're not equipped for that. So that is so validating too for survivors. And actually, I know, churches should all get to a place where they can open up their arms to survivors, but I do respect that they at least acknowledged it and showed, on a sign that, hey, I can't help. That way survivors don't go in there and find that out the hard way and maybe not try again somewhere. In a way, I wish every church that couldn't or won't help survivors of these types of traumas, it should be a requirement that they have those signs up if they can or can't, because it can just be a whole different level of trauma. One of my podcast guests, Chris Leary, he calls it the abuse of the abused. You finally are in your healing, and then you go out and you're abused by the institutions that are supposed to help you. They turn you away, they gaslight you, they can't help you, they push you out of whatever, therapy or the church. And it would be nice if there was just signs up and people actually put verbiage up on if they could or couldn't help. So we're not getting survivors in those hopeless situations where they're just being abused again. And maybe they don't try again because it puts them in such a deep despair.
exactly. So Kathy O'Brien has become a really good friend of mine since I've been speaking.
She's so sweet.
She is sweet. And she is on a mission, a personal mission to help the healers. And she was sharing how so many people who heal from this and they want to help others, but they start too soon while they're still being healed, and it's not helpful. And that we need programs to heal the healers and train the healers how to heal others so that that way we can help more and more. And I think that's just a marvelous indication, too, that there are enough people trying to help other people heal from this. I mean, that's a new phenomena too, that we need programs now to help the healers heal others. I mean, I think that this is we've just come so far in what's happening in the help. I encourage people, when you seek whoever it is you're going to seek for help, really pray about it. And we all have a relationship we might call, so I'll call God, and people might, and when I was in Al-Anon, he was called higher power. So we all have some place that we go for help, whether it's inside of ourselves or spiritually outside or to a trusted person with skin. I recommend that that's what you do as you seek your help, so that way, as early as possible, you connect with the right person for you that's going to help you, rather than just willy-nilly find someone who's going to help. I mean, make sure it resonates with you. And if it doesn't, if they're not the right person for you, then don't give up. Just change. Go to someone else. Don't let it stop you.
100%. And something else that I wanted to bring up that I know you were going to talk about anyways, but I thought I would bring it up here because it seems to sort of go along with this. So the body can experience remembering trauma and pain very supernaturally, how it can be recalled in our body and in our mind in such a real way. On the other end, as you're going through trauma, there's also side effects of trauma in those moments as a child or at whatever period in somebody's life that they're experiencing it, that other supernatural things can happen. How you mentioned a photographic memory. Kathy O'Brien talks about vision being improved 44 times over, to where in those moments of trauma, you can actually see 44 times better than you
Yes.
can without it. And
Yeah.
so there's different supernatural abilities that come from trauma, which is, a big part of why they do this to begin with, because they're trying to exploit those things and condition and develop those different things within you. And you were used in that way with some of these abuses that you went through. And I thought you would be a great person to talk on this topic because again, it's disgusting how they utilize it. On the other end, it's really incredible what we've discovered, that how you said we're taught we only use 10% of our brains, and the things that you guys have went through show how wrong that is, that we're so much more capable of using so much more of our brains, and that there's people that know that and are exploiting it and hurting people to gain the ability to exploit it, and then they're hiding it from all of us.
Yes. That's very true. I believe part of the ability to use the brain. So I'm going to just go down some interesting paths for people. And there's a phrase in Al-Anon. So part of my healing, anytime the Lord during this whole journey says, Lynn, I'd like you to do this or go here for more healing, I'm all in. I may not know why it's going to help, but I'm all in. So for 5 years, he had me in Al-Anon, and that's for friends and family of alcoholics. There's alcoholism on both sides of my family line.
Hmm.
So I was all in. They have a phrase there that says, take what you like and leave the rest. So before I start on this conversation, I want people to know, take what you like and leave the rest. Because this is going to be, I mean, if the topics we've covered in the past have been a little bit difficult sometimes to understand, and this is where we're going to go even deeper. When it comes to the supernatural things, part of my childhood that I was able to do, and different people will call this different things, but I'll call it time travel. And so I'm able time travel, remote view. That's part of my childhood, and I still have it as an adult. And as an adult, where this comes out is I do not wish to do this just random. I do everything with the Lord. I do nothing apart from the Lord, and this is my safe zone. And so if the Lord's involved, I'm all in because there's too much trauma and there's too much out there. And since I've spoken, I mean, there's some real dangers too that you just have to just be aware of. So time travel. I was, and I'll give you a couple of examples. Time travel, remote view, whatever words we're going to use. So I was driving down my car. I don't think I said in my car. I don't think I said this last time. I was driving in my car probably a couple years ago, and I was talking to the Lord. I was talking to Jesus because God has a separate voice than Jesus, who has a separate voice than Holy Spirit. They are three separate beings, spirits, entities in God. So I was talking to Jesus this time. And I said, Jesus, I said, I want to go back to the tunnels. I want to go back as an adult and I want to see where I was. So I do not time travel, remote view. I don't do any of that unless the Lord takes me or says I can. I don't just do it myself. And this is the first time I asked because normally I'm just sitting here doing my thing and he takes me somewhere that he wants me to see. But this time I asked. This was like the only time I asked that I remember. And I said, I want to see the tunnels as an adult. I want to see where I was. And instead, he took me two places. So I was driving down the road in my car when this happened. And somehow I kept driving while I was someplace else. So I can't even begin to explain it, but that's the truth. And so where I went, the first place Jesus took me was the synagogue that he grew up in when he was a little boy. And he took me behind these big round stone pillars in the dark crevices and corners and showed me the pedophilia that was happening at that time. So, this is nothing new. We all know, and I have Holy Spirit goosebumps on me now. We all know this is nothing new. This has been going on for a long, long time. And so I thought, of course, that was happening there. I never thought that before, but of course it was. And then we left there, and then he took me to hell. And he took me the second he came back to life from the dead, after he died on the cross and went to hell for 3 days and took the keys to death. So he the second he came back to life, he let me see him. And he let me see this much of him. And I got to see his side view. And there's a scripture in Revelation, and underneath the scripture in Revelation, there's another scripture that said, they overcame the enemy by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony, which is what your show does. This is how we defeat the enemy. And I mean, this is just the marvelous work that you do for the world, for humanity. But above that scripture, it talks about how Jesus is King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And I saw that side view, and I saw God, a man. Jesus was both determined, warrior, fierce, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And I knew that he came back to lead us into victory in this area. And I know what we're seeing, but we have the victory here, and I'm living proof. Your other survivors are living proof. And the things that we are able to do now to help others and on the other side is just going to grow more and more and more as we enter this age of enlightenment. And he is leading the host of heaven. And that's what I saw, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So that's one example of the time travel I'm able to do whenever the Lord leads me. And I've had different ones too. I remember I was running, and I don't think I shared these last time. You have to tell me if I was. Um, I was running because I do that a lot, and I turned a corner, and all of a sudden, I wasn't here anymore. And I wasn't even, and this is how the Lord does it to me. I'll just accept that one story I just told when I asked. Normally, I'm just doing my thing and I'm gone. And I was gone, and I was with Antifa, and I was in those police stations where they keep like all of when there's a crime and they keep all the goods like behind a locked door. And in the movies, you see that fat police officer at the door, with the door that hinges on top. So that's where I was, at one of those police storerooms with the fat police officer there. But it was full of guns, absolutely full of guns. And they were guns that had been confiscated from American citizens, and they were being stored for Antifa riots to overcome us. That's what I saw. Part of who I am is I'm what you would call a prophet and a seer. And seers see things. And that's what I'm describing. I see things. And I don't make myself do this. I don't say, God, take me somewhere and show me something. It's not how it works. Not with me. And this is, I want it to work the way God wants it to work. When He needs me to see something, I'm there. And it could be at any time, driving, running, doing anything. And when I saw that, anytime He shows me, it could be the future or the past. This was the future, and I think most things are. But then that's not for me to throw up my hands and go, oh no, I had, and tell the world, I have just seen that the government's going to confiscate our guns and Antifa's going to, no. My job's to, I call it pray it down, because we have power, dominion, and authority over this evil that's in the world today. And so I stopped running and I started praying and commanding angels to stop that. Whatever I was seeing, it wasn't going to happen. The guns weren't going to be confiscated in the United States. I stopped running and I was very present where I was. I could see it and I was here at the same time. Unlike that, when I was driving that time, I have no memory of driving, although I was. And praise God, everybody was safe. I'm not sure how that happens either. But this time I stopped running and I prayed that down. And I did not run again until I knew that that was not going to happen. And so I knew whatever I saw that I could stop. Sometimes I think I can, or I know that I can prevent some of it, but God doesn't show me those things for no reason. He wants me to take action. And in my world is to pray. What was fascinating was, so I stopped, I prayed until I knew that's not going to happen. And then I tried to run again, and I thought, you have a piece of glass in your shoe. And I thought, you don't have a piece of glass in your shoe, in your sock, you don't have a piece of glass. But I kept running and I kept thinking, you have a piece of glass in your sock. It was this tiny little pebble in the heel, but it felt like I was running on glass. And between the demons, the body memories, everything I've described, it could be so many things. But at this moment, I thought the timing of that. And so I wanted to wait. I was like halfway in my run. I had about 3 miles to go. And because of my childhood, I can handle pain. It's just, I can handle an extreme amount of pain. And it hurt, but I've had so much worse. So I thought, you just keep running, get your runnings. It's important to me to get my runs in. And then, and then I'll see what's in my sock, because whatever, if there was something, I wanted to know. I got home and I took my shoe and my sock off, and there was a piece of glass in it, literally a piece of glass. And so then I knew that the evil side can manifest objects like we can. And the evil side did not like the fact that God showed me that, and I was able to pray it down and stop it. I knew I was by the time I was done praying. And in return, that's what they manifested. But I figured, joke's on them, right? It was so teeny, and there were no cuts, or I still have it. Matter of fact, it's probably behind me someplace. But anyway, I keep it behind me, all my stuff, my spiritual things that pop up. So I have it in a little baggie right now. But it was teeny weeny, didn't cut me, just caused some discomfort. So, it's like if that was their worst, so we win. So that's something that is this supernatural, amazing, astounding, that comes from my childhood.
Do you remember having that ability to connect on that level spiritually before you were sort of discovered by your abusers and exploited for it?
Well, so I mean, that's a great question. Since I started being abused from the time I was born,
Mm.
until I was 5 years old. Now, whenever I was little, God was always there, always there. I could see Him. And it would always amaze me that, and I don't think I talked about this last time, but I don't remember him. But it would always amaze me that the evil people couldn't see Him. He was right there, and He's right here all the time. I just have to laugh. These evil people today, they think they're doing these secret things behind closed doors and no one knows. Well, I've got news for them. God Almighty Himself is sitting right there. And not only is He sitting there on His throne, He sits on His throne. If He ever stands up, there's a scripture that says in the New Testament, what a dreadful thing to be in the hands of the living God. I've seen that. And I would never want to be there. So normally He's sitting on His throne and He's got a book and He takes notes. So he sees what everybody's doing, and He gives us, people get to choose. God's not a dictator puppet on a string. That's not who we are. People get to choose good or bad. He helps, but those people were choosing. And in with my childhood, my parents failed. They had responsibility for me, and they failed. And so because of that, I was with these people making these choices, and so God was there helping me. So He was always there. I would see Him, and the evil people wouldn't. The children were. We saw them all the time, and Jesus was always there, and angels and demons. And there were male warrior angels everywhere. There were mothering female angels everywhere. And when things would get really bad, Jesus would take me and we'd be gone. We'd be up in heaven. I got to play there a lot. And I have all these memories of being in heaven. And it's not disassociation because I still go there today. I mean, I still see God, I still see Jesus, and I don't disassociate. I rarely disassociate now. It's a way of life. So, and it wasn't disassociation then. I see God, I see Jesus, I see angels, I see demons, I still go to heaven. It's still a way of life. So when it comes to all my supernatural, and frankly, any little one, that the viewers, if they ask their nieces or nephews or grandchildren that are under 5 especially, and do you see Jesus? Do you see angels? Ask them because they do. When these little ones, uh, I've been around my little nieces and nephews, and I remember one day my niece said, "Hi, Jesus," just, because he's there. They see them, or if you have a little one that gets really scared at night, there's a demon there. I mean, kids don't make this stuff up. They don't have the wherewithal, they don't have the intellectual ability to pretend that something is there scaring them when it's not. And it may be a movie they saw, but if that's the case, shame on the parent because that's a portal. And these evil movies, they're a portal to the demonic, and you give demons permission to come in your home, and they terrorize the children because the children can see them. So it's just a warning to parents, the stuff's real. um, but I have a good friend who's high up in the Department of Reeducation, and she said that she believes that the Department of Reeducation starts training that out of children so that they no longer have that connection with God. It's part of the program. It's part of um, us not knowing who we are and not being able to use all of our brain.
There was some article that I read years and years and years ago before I was aware and got into doing any of this work. And I came across it randomly and it said, and I didn't look into it further. I have no idea how true it was, but I can believe it. It said that there was an Aboriginal community, I believe in North America, and because they had never been told what a ship was, they had never seen like a big commercial ship before. When ships actually came to America in the area that they were at, or wherever it is that this article said that they were from, I'm just going to use America as an example. They literally couldn't see the ships out in the water because they were never educated on what a ship looks like. They didn't see anything because it wasn't in their consciousness that something like that could exist. And so when I think about that story often now, sometimes hearing these testimonies, because I really do think that we're equipped in such a supernatural way as humans that we're capable of so much. But because we're taught we only have 5 senses, because we're put in this box of this is who you are, you only use 10% of your brain, it's drilled into us that we're just these little kind of like useless, non-magical, creatures that are on this earth that we're just meant to work and slave away, and that we're worth nothing else. There's nothing more to us, that we actually take on that belief, and because of that, we suppress all of the things that, as you say, the evil people, it's a good just category to put them in. They know the other 90% of what we're capable of, and they use those things behind the scenes for really dark purposes. And they shut that off with us, I think, like you said, from a very young age, because they know that if we were to tap into more than 10% of our brains, if we were to realize the spiritual gifts that are given to us from birth, that all of us are capable of to some degree or form, that we would be more powerful than them, that we would understand how to use those things for good in the world and be able to completely end what they do, and expose it through these gifts, and heal the world and heal each other through them, and it's pretty incredible, to learn through you. That's one of the things I've actually found extremely inspiring is it helps us like take back the love for ourselves that we should have always had, and to be like, no, you're not just this like little useless thing that's just meant to like crank 80 hours a week at work and to go home and not do anything. Like we're capable of so much more than what they tell us. They tell us all of that because they want us shrunken and they don't want us to realize our power and how incredible and supernatural we are and all the different things that we could do together and as individuals if we knew what we were actually capable of and the things that we were born with, and all those things get written off as conspiracies, that all these spiritual gifts are just in fiction movies, and learning through survivors, that is the complete opposite, and of course, some people are born with a higher propensity to use these gifts. Not everybody has them on the same level, but regardless, we all have the capability of doing so much more than than what we're told. And the only people that know that right now on a large scale are these evil people who are literally harvesting all of that from children to create more evil in the world instead of allowing those children and the rest of society to create beauty from it. And I love that you and others who did go through that and have the knowledge, now that you've come out and you're able to share it and recognize it for what it is, that you are using those things and that you're being called to use them and they're activating in certain scenarios where you can do good with them, and that now you're able to take that and harness it in the way that it was intended to be, which was for good.
Yeah, so that'll bring me to the next just interesting thing. I love that for your viewers. So part of this, I want to talk about the embedded terrorists in the United States. I'm going to go to that topic.
Let's do that.
So we're all aware of it. We've all know it. We've all heard it. We've all seen illegal aliens flood the nation. We don't know, we're seeing them being removed, but we know that there's a lot. When this first started, you mentioned how Kathy O'Brien, Mark Phillips talked about how 44 times the visual acuity. I also have 44 times the auditory acuity, and I have it to this day. And whenever I'm out, so just this one topic, I'll give two stories. One of the healing things God told me to do a few years ago was to go to Celebrate Recovery. And Celebrate Recovery is a 12-step program held in churches. And I went there. I think he had me go for a year or two, and then he told me I was finished. One night when I was there, there was worship before you break into small groups, and there was a small group of women with various types of trauma that you could talk about it. The only thing that I know of in my community like this. I was in worship one night, and all of a sudden I saw these two angels beside me, big. I mean, these were big, and they were male warrior angels, probably 7 feet tall because the males are, and they're dressed. And I saw these as a little girl too. They're dressed in Roman garb, Roman attire, but it's white and gold. They have giant weapons, spears, and they're very, they don't smile. They're very, very focused in concert. They're warriors. I mean, they're just like, consider it maybe a Navy SEAL today or something like, I mean, they're fierce warriors, the elite of the elite. And I had one on either side, and they were so close to me for protection. They were hugging my body. I mean, they were shaped like normal men, angels, but that's how close they were to me. And I could see the one on the left fully. I could feel the one on the right in the spirit. Couldn't see him, but I could feel him. I could see this one. And the next day, whenever I got up, I do hours of Bible study and prayer time every morning. I have for years and years and years. It's part of my healing. Plus, I love the Lord so much. I was in, and I was asking, who are they? Because I have lots of angels, and some have names, some don't, but I like to know their names if they have them. And Holy Spirit said these are sentries. And he said they're sentries with an S. So I Googled that, and those are ancient sentries. The current spelling would be with the C. The ancient times they used an S. So I thought, okay, that makes sense. So in this world of what makes sense in the supernatural, right? So that day I went out running, and I didn't think about these angels. I think about my angels when I run all the time, but anytime I run, well, anytime I run, I always see Jesus in front of me, and I have Holy Spirit here, and I have God Almighty on his throne over here. And that's how I roll. And I've got angels everywhere. So this is how I roll. So I was running down the road, and there was a car. And this car It was a very expensive, big white kind of Cadillac looking car. And it was parked, when you stop at an intersection, four-way stop sign, you face the intersection. This car was parked blocking the whole intersection sideways. And I could tell that he was from the Middle East. And this is the 44 times of visual acuity. I could tell he was a terrorist in my community. And he did not belong because we don't park that way. We don't park, and block a whole intersection, both sides of a lane in a four-way stop sign that's manual. We don't, we face the four-way stop signs and we wait our turn and we proceed. Well, you could tell he didn't know what he was doing. And he was writing something. And I knew, and this is part of my spiritual gifts is as a prophet, I know that I know that I know things, and I just do. And especially current events. And so I knew he was a terrorist. And when I was running toward him, when I run, people will stare because I'm a moving object. Everybody's in their car. I'm a moving object. So I know what this is like. He never looked at me. And I knew that was equally weird. And I was coming on him soon. I knew what he was. And all of a sudden, the angel the night before that I didn't see on my right side, I saw the arm of the angel and I saw him go like this. And he protected me from sight from that terrorist. Couldn't see me. That's why he couldn't see me. And then I had that same look on my face, Emma, when I saw that angel's arm, and the angel, then I saw his face and he looked taken. And it's not these warrior angels, they don't look surprised very often, I have to say. They just don't. And because that's not their thing. But he looked surprised that I saw him because I'm not sure anyone had ever seen him, but I did. And I knew that he'd protected me from that terrorist, and that's why the terrorist didn't see me. Well, again, in my world, I don't throw up my arms. Oh my goodness, run home, hide, stock up, lock the doors. We're going to be bombed. And I mean, that's not my purpose when I see these things. Whenever I got a little bit further up the road, I started walking and I prayed it down. I started commanding angels to get that thing out of my community, that there's not going to be any terrorist attacks. We have the most power, dominion, and authority over evil. Ephesians 6, our battle isn't against flesh and blood, it's against principalities. My battle is not against this man, it's against the demons controlling what he's doing, in him, on him, wherever they are. And so I have the power, dominion, and authority to pray it down, to bind those things. When we bind those things, it renders the human powerless. This is how we win, because without their demons, they don't have the power to do these things that they're doing to us. And I commanded angels to get rid of that thing, the person. That's why I call him a thing, because a terrorist isn't a human to me. And commanded them to do that. And I didn't run until I was satisfied that that thing was removed from my community. We have the most power, dominion, and authority in our home with our family, friends, and loved ones. And then in our neighborhood, our communities, our towns, our counties. And then as we expand further out, our power gets a bit weaker and weaker, unless we have loved ones in another area of the world. But it's not that we don't still pray, but that's the level of power. So I knew I had complete power to get rid of this. And that's how we should all roll. And when I run, so this is the second part of this story. Whenever I run for the past 3 years, I've seen good guy embedded military in my community. So I want people to know that when the terrorists were all let in, all these illegal aliens and terrorists, the good guys, white hats, people will call this different things, but they didn't throw up their arms and say, oh no, the United States is flooded with terrorists, we're all going to die. No, the good guy military took countermeasures, and they've embedded military throughout our communities. We've heard recently that President Trump has been and is deploying the National Guard because there are terrorists in our I've seen them. This is a real thing. So he's getting rid of the illegals, many of whom are terrorists, because we watched young men of fighting age pour across our borders. So that's what he's removing, are those that would harm us, and I've seen them. And so the people who love the United States didn't throw up their arms and say, we're just going to let a bunch of terrorists harm U.S. citizens. No, they embedded good guy military. So I've seen them both. So whenever I run, when I will see, I still will see to this day on occasion an illegal alien who's a terrorist, and I will pray them down. And because of the 44 times of visual acuity, because I'm seeing them, not hearing them, I know what they are. I can tell you what country they're from too, because Holy Spirit tells me. And I'll talk to him about making sure that this is a terrorist before I start, praying things because they might be living here. I mean, I don't know, but I do know. I mean, actually, I do know. And I pray it down. And normally I will still see them maybe for a few weeks or so, maybe a few days, because I figure it takes time in the physical to get one out, but they're always gone 100% of the time. And I see, especially the past few months, more and more good guy embedded military. And I believe they're watching my podcasts for several reasons. But one reason is I was running, it's probably been 2 months ago now. And when I run past them, because they don't look like us, I'm in Missouri. People in Missouri, they look like Missourians. They're for the most part out of shape. Well, you're in Missouri, but you're in St. Louis. St. Louis is like the East Coast. For the most part, they're kind of out of shape and they're just casually running and they're not super athletic and it's just like a run to run. These military guys, I mean, they're running machines. It's a total different level of running. And so when I run past them, I know who they are. And this one day I was running past one, and I always talk to Holy Spirit, make sure but I know who they are. And this guy ran past me and he looked me in the eye and he said, "My hero." That's what he said. I know. I did the same expression.
Oh my gosh.
No, didn't even quite know what to say. And so later I thought about it and I thought, whatever I'm doing, Emma, the speaking that I do, the podcast that I'm doing, the truth telling that I'm doing, um, the good guys know and they like it. And they like it. And then I actually had one probably a month ago stop and talk to me for 2 or 3 minutes, just about stuff, nothing. And runners don't stop and talk to each other. I have to say, it's just not what you do. You're out running. And but these are so. I say all that to share what your point was. Um, we're given gifts and talents that are supernatural because of what happened to us when we were little. And especially once you're step one to me is process out the trauma enough, get a firm grip and handle on processing out the trauma. And then when you're called, I know I was called and God said, "You're ready, you're healed enough, step out now and start speaking." And I knew the things he'd asked me to do. And then we will change the world because we have the supernatural powers and gifts. What Satan means for evil, God means for good. That's in the New Testament. And these evil people had no idea what they've unleashed it with us. They have no idea what they were doing. They thought, and they did harm us. I mean, very, very badly. They had no idea the power of God is so much greater and what he would do with the harm they tried to do and how it would be their defeat. And it will be because we have supernatural gifts that others don't. But I do believe that everyone can do this. It's not just those with trauma.
Right. It was just more, you were exploited for it. And because they knew about it and then you were made aware of it, you were able to develop it more. You actually knew about it, and so did they. And so they were conditioning you, and they, like you said, with, medical doctors, it was practice. They were practicing these different things and getting you to hone that in. Where if somebody doesn't even know that they have it, they're not going to try to practice it. They're not going to try to even, activate those parts and those things, those gifts inside themselves because they don't even know that it's there. And so that makes perfect sense. And I completely agree with you. Every human is supernatural. We all have the ability to use more of our brains than they say. We all have these spiritual gifts that vary by degree and kind, but we all have them, and it's just been sucked out of our knowledge, even the supernatural just around us. That's another thing that most people aren't aware of or connected to just because we're not taught about the spiritual realm growing up. You can go to church and learn about it. You can read the Bible, but we learn, to me, like I've learned most about this through trauma survivors who were pushed out of the consciousness of the normal brain and into these different realms where they experience different spiritual and supernatural um environments and realms, that most people aren't privy to just in their body. And so you learn also that there's so much more around us and how you've been able to connect with heaven, hell, angels, demons, God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit. You can connect with these things because of these experiences that you've had, where most people are so disconnected from it because we're not really taught how to connect with it. We're not taught about a spiritual realm existing all around us at the same time. So, God could be sitting right next to many of us, like you said, sitting in his throne in the same room as these perpetrators, and they can't see it because they're so disconnected from it, and so are we. But knowing that and like hearing it, it's just really inspiring to me. It's helped me connect on such a spiritual level to the world around me. Even if I can't see it, I know it's there because it's been testified so many times that it exists. And knowing that it makes me feel more safe in this environment and more able to interact with more than just, internally inside my body to actually reach out and, like you said, pray and ask for things and talk to and interact with the energies around me in God, and I think it's just really inspiring. I always think if people listen to survivor testimonies, everybody would be on a different level consciously and spiritually. We would all rise on a different level of consciousness because we'd all of a sudden have these aha moments of course that exists. Of course, we've just been so disconnected from it that we feel that it's miles away or that it's fantasy or fiction, when in reality it's all just right around us, like at our grasp, we can reach out and ask for help, and we can have prayers answered, and we can have angels going with us on runs and protecting us from terrorists seeing us. But we don't realize that. And even when it happens, we can't even acknowledge it, these different gifts and miracles that are given to us through these spiritual realms and God and angels and, even demons interacting with us. Like we can't acknowledge these things because we don't even see that it's there.
I know. I love what comes to mind. This is going to, with you, your platform is the largest platform in the world, to my knowledge, that shares long form survivor interviews, period, the end. And thankfully, you've got a wonderful, large following of amazing people. And by saying this, there's a story as a runner, and I wish I could remember the name, but there was a gentleman who, during some Olympic game, or maybe it was a university run, he was a sprinter. So he would run short distances of time. And in the history of the world, no one had ever beat this one time. So someone in the past had ran this short amount of time super fast, and it was in everyone's minds, this can't be broken. It hasn't been broken forever. It can't be done. Well, one day a gentleman did it, and it shocked everyone. They're like, well, we didn't think this could happen. We didn't think that this could be done. And guess what happened in short order after that day? Everybody broke the record. And then everybody started passing and running even faster than the record. So that's what I think this conversation does. When you have survivors on and they say these things that, because I'm a sane grown adult, international human resource consultant. I mean, I just, so when people say these things, when I say this and people listen, it opens their subconscious, it opens their mind to the possibility. What if? And by opening that up, it's just like whoever broke that record the first time, he thought differently than the world. He knew he could do it. For whatever reason, he knew he could, and he did. And once he did, everyone thought they could, and they did. So that's how I think this is going to work.
Amen. I love that analogy. That is such a powerful story, and it's so true, what's brought from the unconscious to the conscious, and just being able to switch our belief systems and ask questions and realize, the potential of us as humanity. And equally, I think it's incredible what the different trauma that somebody can go through and that they don't break through it. And not only that, but that you can actually heal from it. And your healing journey is absolutely incredible. I know that there's been some really powerful tools. You talk about your therapist, and that always gives me so much hope to know that there's therapists out there that are open to this. They're able to, you know, get their college degrees and not just stay stuck in a box, that they're able to critically think outside of that and ask that what if this client is telling the truth and they went through mind control, they went through these sadistic and satanic abuses and all these things are true. What would I have to know to help this person? And your therapist is just such a great example of somebody who championed having an open mind and believing you, and I think that's beautiful. But she was one part of your story, and I'd love for you to talk about, anything else in addition to therapy, but also these other modalities and healing tools that you have, because I think they could be really helpful for other people on the other side of the screen.
I think so too. So I love this conversation because my mind is on hope. I speak to give people hope. I feel like I'm a living example of if I can do it, you can do it.
You're a miracle.
There's hope. I am a miracle. I know my therapist will say I'm a miracle. She said, Lynn, everybody else who's been through what you have, they're dead. They didn't survive, or they've committed suicide, or they're in long-term care institutions, or drugs and alcohol in prison. And praise God, I know that I'm here for such a time as this to be able to speak and to be able to share. So before I get into what helped me, I want to start with how I got in the position to be helped,
Perfect.
because I think that's uh, whenever. So in the past, before I got to 2011, when the first repressed memory hit, I was in places where it was impossible to heal. I could not have healed. And I know that God helped guide and direct my steps to where I got to the point where I could. So these are my tips on how to get to a place where you can heal. The first thing is to remove anything that's surrounding you or in your life that will prevent your healing. And I encourage people to pray and seek the Lord about what that might be in your life. In my life, step one was, and so I love the Lord and I have a very, very close relationship with Him. Years ago, I was married to a gentleman that I'm just going to say was not a nice man by any stretch of the imagination. As I was with that gentleman, I would never heal. It would be impossible, absolutely impossible, because I was repeatedly traumatized in many ways by being with this gentleman and my ex. And the first step was whenever I was ready and I had to prepare, God told me that my first step was I had to leave the church, the established church from the time I was saved, whenever I was in my 20s. And from that point forward, I associated God with the church together. And I wanted to be, anytime the church doors were open, I was there. My ex was like a deacon. We were very involved, and I loved the church. But at this point in my life, God said, you're being brainwashed and you have to get out. And by that, he meant in my church, I think in many churches, it was taught God gives you one man to marry, and through thick and thin, you stay with them. And they should have a caveat unless um, you're being harmed in various ways, then get out. But they don't have that caveat. So the first thing was, he said, I needed to get away from the church so that I wasn't brainwashed anymore. And so I did. And then the next thing he did was, it's time to leave. He told me this, you're in great danger. And at that time, I owned business with my ex, and I had to take steps behind the scenes to do what I needed to do, but I did them as fast as I could. And then I left. So that was the next thing. And then I needed to remove anyone in my family that was causing me harm. And because as long as that influence was close to me, I could not heal. So I did those steps. And this is a few years worth of work, I have to tell you. And then so I'm my day job, the International Human Resource Consultant. At that point in my life, whenever I was getting divorced, God took my sales and practically eliminated them. When it comes to me and money, I don't think about so I watch myself get sold. I watched myself get sold for money. I saw cash exchanged. I saw money for me. So I have a whole different thought about money than most people. And it's extremely triggering, is what it is. I mean, it's like extremely triggering. I've done a lot of work on this, but it's still extremely triggering. And so the way that I've been able to function with this is the Lord told me in my businesses, He would bring all the sales. And I was just like, phew, because I don't know how to do that. I mean, I can help people. I can do that part, with whatever He's asking me to do. But the sales part, I don't know how, but I can help people. So He brings the people. So whenever I get an email or a call or a text or something, I know this is someone God Almighty has handpicked for me to help. And then I proceed. So I help, and then the money comes. So that's how I roll. And then when it comes to spending money, I don't spend money unless I pray about it. I mean, of course, I get food and things, but so that's how I roll with money. So when because of that, my sales, I mean, after that divorce, just plummeted to nothing. They went from this huge thriving business to nothing. But that was part of me healing. Because as long as I was working 120 hours a week, going here, there, and everywhere and scurrying around, I wasn't going to heal. I wasn't going to heal. So I went from now, I could always pay my bills. I had just enough to pay my bills. And I remember when the divorce was final, I had enough money in the bank to pay my bills for 1 month, period, the end, but I was free. And there's no price you can put on freedom. Praise God. I'd pay it again. I mean, I call that the price of freedom. Praise God. But then I couldn't have a ton of job stress. There's no way you can heal with the burden of all those hours, all that stress. And then the healing started. So everything needed to be removed from my life that was preventing me from being able to focus on me and the Lord and get healing. That's step one. Okay. So then the next thing, during that time, part of my healing was Al-Anon. And I just encourage people to go to groups and organizations with group meetings that make sense to you. So Al-Anon was the first step because alcoholism runs bad on both sides of my family. And there I learned about that. And then my therapist arrived. In Al-Anon, my sponsor arrived. And the healing, so in Al-Anon, you have a sponsor, and it's a 12-step program, and you do certain things each step for recovery. I really do recommend it to people. And when I got the sponsor, one of the steps was you tell them about your background. And it was such a scary, scary step. And at that time, I only remembered a smidge, just a smidge of this. And when I went to tell her, prior to this, my entire life, I felt shame all the time. And I never knew why because I didn't remember. And the shame, if there's a river this wide, that's how big the shame was in my body. It felt like I had a perpetual river of shame and I did not know why. But it didn't matter what I did or where I went, it was there 24/7. But I didn't have 95% of my memory during this. So there comes a time when the steps where you share with someone all your strengths and then everything you've done in your life that you don't feel good about. And it's just part of the healing is getting it out, pus in a wound. And I didn't remember a ton, but I told her what I did. And in that instant, I felt no shame anymore. It was just gone. And I thought, what's that? I mean, because I'd had it my whole life. And I remember thinking, and they say in Al-Anon, there's a miracle, wait for your miracle. You hear that all the time. And I thought, oh my goodness, is that what they mean? And I went home and I kept thinking it was going to go away. And I went home and I thought, okay, I still don't feel shamed. I mean, I felt it my whole life like a river. And then I woke up I thought, you'll wake up the next morning, it'll be gone. Well, I woke up the next morning and it wasn't gone. And I remember sitting there just like this, and I was like, feel some shame, feel some shame, feel some shame. Because I was so used to feeling some shame. I thought, you know, it's going to come back. Well, praise God, I've never felt it since. Not 1 ounce, not 1 iota, totally free from that. And that's the power to me of wherever you feel led to go for healing, go for as long as you feel led to go. And then when it was time to leave, I left, and I knew when it was time to leave. but that was a big step, was Al-Anon. And then we talked about triggers, so that was a big step. And part of processing through triggers is writing out your memories. It kicks in the analytical side of your brain. So that's another step. And then forgiveness. So I'll stop now in case you have a question before I go to forgiveness.
I just want to say how powerful that was. I think one of the scariest things about thinking about sharing your testimony is on top of the shame that you've had to internalize for the abuses and the things that you were forced to do, the things that you were forced to watch, the things that were happening around you. On top of that, anytime a child tries to cry out for help in those scenarios, you're piled with more shame. You're not allowed to. You have, like you said, when you were 6 months old, you had already shut off the ability to cry. There's so many different ways I think that shame is just put on a child even for just wanting to share their story. And so as you grow up and you recall memories, now all of a sudden you can maybe start to heal from some of the stuff that you went through, but there's not only the shame that's from the things that you went through as a child, but there's also you're afraid that there's going to be shame from the people that you tell. And so much more often than not, hardly anybody when they hear these stories, it takes a pretty, kind of sadistic person anyways to hear this stuff and to have something negative to say. The majority of people don't react that way. They're very supportive and they feel so bad. They're very compassionate. That's like a normal reaction to hearing about somebody's pain and trauma. So I think that's like such a big part in these testimonies and these stories is like the freedom that comes too from knowing that you're going to be accepted for sharing about the things that you carry so much shame about, that you're not, that part of your life is over. You're not going to tell people and every single person is going to gaslight you or tell you to stop talking or to threaten you or to threaten that something bad's going to happen if you tell. To be able to let all that go too is so powerful, and to know that you can share your story and that the reaction from most normal, healthy people is that compassion and embracing your story and feeling really bad for what you went through and meeting you with love. And I'm so grateful and happy that you were able to experience that. I know there's so many other people that have yet to experience that, but hearing it from somebody like you who's gone through all these different steps and stages of healing on all different levels, and starting on, a small level where you only had so much memory and you told somebody just those memories, it can show even just the amount of shame that can be dropped from even just sharing a little bit of your story. So I really love that you brought that up, because I think that can empower people who are really struggling with even getting a word out to somebody. They're still internalizing everything, afraid of the shame of just telling their story to somebody.
See, that's beautiful. And the rest of that story, I had mentioned earlier, my friend whose ex had held a gun to her 2-year-old's head. Well, that was my sponsor. So
My
while
God.
I was sharing, she was listening, and in her mind, she had never talked to anybody about that,
Oh, I love
right?
that.
She
Yeah.
had never talked to anybody about what her ex had done when it happened to her daughter. Her daughter ended up drugs in prison from all that,
Oh my
because
gosh.
this is the path people go: suicide, long-term mental health, drugs and alcohol, prison. It's horrendous what these pedophiles do to children. I mean, it's a long-term, it's a life sentence for us. But so she started receiving healing, and she didn't speak of it then. But the closer we got, and the more we became friends, I was able to help her understand her daughter, who is now grown, and help with their healing process. Still a huge work in process because the trauma is so big and deep and great. But that's how our God works. That's how there's a scripture, I think it's in James 1, that God comforts us, and then we comfort others. And that's how it works, heart to heart, soul to soul. You and I talking, I know there'll be a lot of people watching it, but right now it's me and you. So just talking heart to heart and soul to soul and sharing. And when people listen to this, they'll think I'm talking just to them, because I watch podcasts too. You feel like the person speaking to you. And this is how we do it. This is how we heal the planet.
Yes. And I also loved how you talked about creating safety in your life. I think the sort of mysteriousness that around repressed memories just because people don't understand how that can happen. When they do learn, I think most people just assume that it's literally just a memory that just pops up. It doesn't need any specific type of condition to happen. They just pop up randomly and, the person just remembers. When that's not the case, most of the time, I've heard very rare exceptions where the person that recalled memories didn't create an environment of safety for themselves, the people around them where they were. And it's not just a memory that just comes up, it's a part of you that feels safe enough to share that memory. And if they don't feel safe, they're going to keep that memory compartmentalized and not share, just like how we do in real life. How you said it took you how many years to tell, one person about the bit of trauma that you knew. And when you did, it was freeing for you, and sort of set you on a journey. And same thing with after you started having flood of memories, but I think that's such an important part and a missing piece to a lot of these stories because a lot of survivors might not know that. And so they're not actively looking to create that for themselves, and their healing therefore gets stunted because those parts of them are like, no, I'm not safe. I'm not going to come share with you. I'm in danger. We're in danger. There's so much like panic and turmoil when creating safety and having safe people and going home to a safe place and working for safe people, having just creating that around you can make all those different parts of yourself sort of breathe a sigh of relief and feel like they can start integrating memory and sharing together and helping you recall those memories.
That's so beautiful. You have such an amazing way. I don't know. I should have you on my show because you have so much knowledge from everyone that you've talked to and interviewed. Matter of fact, we're going to have to plan that. I was thinking about that earlier today. You just if you're open to that, of course, but you're just a wealth of information that everyone needs to know. So yes, it's important to be in a safe environment, and that includes as you're healing, like Al-Anon, I found to be safe. And again, that's for me. As I share what helped me heal, this is my story. So again, everyone listening can take what they like and leave the rest. But so whatever resonates with you, I encourage you to proceed with. And if something doesn't, don't. But in Al-Anon, I found a safe space because it's confidential, it's private. People there have been harmed every which way, but with alcoholism and what that does, including abuse as a child. So it was a very safe place to share.
That's so wonderful. I'm really happy that you're able to find a community. That can be one of the hardest parts initially for survivors. They go to a church or they go to an organization and they're just shut out time after time. And I love that intuitively you were able to sort of navigate that. And I'm sure that there was pitfalls along the way, but you ended up, intuitively being able to bring yourself to people, organizations, and places that were very safe and accepting of you for who you were, what you went through, and who helped support you along the way and who helped create that safety for you. Because I really do, I believe that definitely is like the number one thing, and something that survivors should not give up on finding, because once you do find it, there could be parts of you that really needed that connection to that one person or that institution or organization or community, and that could give safety to even just a part of you, even if it's not all of you, and I think it's really important that people actively look for that. And even people that didn't go through it, what you did, just being safe in general and creating that should be something that all of us are taught to do, but we're so used to dysfunction a lot of times, especially survivors who grew up with it, like you said, 24/7. What's comfortable to you is chaos. Like you said, it was weird for you to not feel shame, or for most people, it feels like an icky outfit that you're wearing to feel it for one day or for one instance where you're used to wearing that. And when you finally take it off, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm naked. Where's my shame?
Yes, I felt, bring it back. Where is it? But I was glad it was gone.
I bet. Yeah, you probably felt so much lighter.
Yeah, yeah. So my next safe space, and I do encourage just the rest of the topic, whatever you need to do as an adult to feel safe. So like for me, today I have a security system. I have cameras all around the house. I have just all kinds of things in place, locks on my gates, to where I feel safe. And everyone I encourage just do it. And my therapist encouraged that. Do whatever you need to do to feel safe always. That's number one.
Number one.
My next safe space was celebrate recovery. And Celebrate Recovery, I mentioned before, is a 12-step program through a church. And they have a group specifically, their small groups are separated by men and women. So you're with Al-Anon, it's mixed, men and women. So sometimes it's not comfortable to share some things, and that's okay. But with Celebrate Recovery, you're with women only. And so there's a lot more sharing of sexual harm and trauma than other places I've been. And from my background, at least in my community, that's the only place I know where a group of women who've suffered all kinds of trauma can get together and speak safely. So that was my next step that the Lord told me to go to. That's where I saw those two sentries. But this is where I want to spend a minute to talk about forgiveness. I've always known the importance of forgiveness, and forgiveness is not forgetting, and forgiveness is not a kumbaya with your abuser and perpetrator. Remembering helps you protect yourself from these people, situations, events. Forgiveness is for me. It's breaking the energetic tie with the perpetrator. So I'm free. It's my freedom. It has nothing to do with them. It's my freedom. And it does not mean I ever spend any time with any of them or I hang around them or I have a conversation with them. None of that. I'm going to protect myself. Um, Forgiveness is for me. Knowing the importance of it, whenever I started having my memories, I would do what I called a business transaction with God. And I would say, I forgive them. It was like a contract. I'm a businesswoman. I forgive them. And I didn't mean it and I didn't feel it, but I said it. And that was as far as I could go. And God honored that. He knew that was my best. I was doing my best. And every time I had a memory, I had to forgive pedophiles, the medical staff, the government employees, my mom, it was just on and on and on and on and on. Every memory brought up something else because I wanted my freedom. And if I didn't, but again, I didn't feel it was a business transaction. And I did that for years. So I was in, two things happened in Celebrate Recovery. It was I want to say the third meeting I attended. I was sitting in that small group with the women, listening to their stories. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, from my heart, I forgave my mother. Just forgave her. It was like that river of shame lifting, same thing. So I encourage people, wherever you're called to go, go, because the miracles happen there. And things that you've struggled with for your lifetime can just be lifted. And from the heart, that whole burden, because in the end, she's the one at fault for this. My dad was a workaholic and an alcoholic. He was gone all the time. She sent me there, all those places, willingly, fully knowing I was going. And so she was the most difficult to forgive. But I did from my heart. I just forgave that woman. And as a matter of fact, the most interesting thing, the past week, I have been sitting here remembering all the things she did that were nice and kind. I won't say kind, that were nice for me. This whole past week, that's all I can think about was, wow, I had a roof over my head, and after the years of trauma, I had food to eat because I didn't when I was little, but then I did. And so I was able to just start thinking of what she did. But anyway, so forgiveness. So I was able to forgive her from the heart. And that was just so freeing. Now, she was alive then, and I hardly saw her the last few years of her life because by then I was completely out of denial, all these memories, and I wanted nothing to do with her because she was still very verbally, emotionally abusive. So I protected myself, but I was free. And then the second place of freedom, God told me to, and this was the second and last biggest. Well, I'll say one real quick, forgiving myself. The time travel and remote viewing and things I talked about. One day, out of nowhere, I can't even remember where I was, but all of a sudden, Jesus was here, and I was back in heaven. And this is how it works. I just go. And I think I was here at the house working, like sitting here at my computer, like I'm just gone. And I was three again. And we were back in the green pastures. So one place I would go during trauma, Psalm 23 talks about green pastures. There really is a green pastures in heaven. And so he took me back there. And I spent a lot of time there during trauma, just sitting with him playing. So he took me back to the green pasture, and he was on the cross. And he had me by the hand as three, but he was also on the cross. So he, I mean, they're God that they can do whatever they want to, right? So there, and he took me to the foot of the cross. And in heaven, they don't move their lips. It's telepathy, and I can do telepathy now. That's another one of my gifts. But anyway, so telepathy. And he spoke to me. I was 3 at the time, and I knew what he was saying was that forgive myself and put it at the bottom of the cross. Put it at the cross. Put it right underneath where he died. And the little 3-year-old in me, to forgive myself, the only thing I knew was icky. The things I did were icky, and that was the only word I had. And so I knew Jesus wanted me to do it, and I wanted to please him, and I didn't like the icky anymore. And so I took the icky just mentally and I put it at the feet of the cross, and he smiled, and then we went off running, kind of skipping, and I left it there at the foot of the cross. So I forgave myself in that instant. Because there's a lot of, even when you're little, so I, so I'll get emotional on that because I love the Lord so much. But anyway, so I forgave myself. The third biggest thing was God told me to go to an event. There was a big, well-known pastor that I watch a lot of um, church shows on television now, prophetic shows, pastors I like there because I can't find one locally. And I don't think the Lord wants me to go back to a building church, at least not now. And so I went to this guy was speaking in another town, and it was a huge meeting, thousands and thousands of people. And normally I would have hidden in the very back. And I felt like all these angels were pushing me to the front row. So there I went right at the front row. I mean, the pastor could have spit on me. That was how close I was to the man. And I never do stuff like that. And so at the end, he did a prayer for healing. And so I said the prayer and I did what he said. And it was like he was talking physical healing. And all of a sudden, it's like I felt like I had windows in the sides of my head and they opened up and sunshine came in and I could see a broom sweeping and it filled with light and I could smell grass from the spring and it was like the winter and I was free. I felt freedom. And all my life, it's like being in chains. It's like being burdened with a weighted blanket just from what's happened to me. And I was free. And he told this story then of this serial killer. And the serial killer was getting ready to murder woman number 21. And she was listening to this man on a DVD, and he heard the audible voice of God. He was making her drive somewhere where he was going to kill her. She was going to be number 21. And the serial killer heard the audible voice of God who said, "Son, this is your last chance." Which this is the unfathomable love of God. He called the serial killer son. And the serial killer knew what he meant. He wasn't gonna survive. So he said that he would give up the gun if this pastor, who I was now listening to, came and got it. She's like, I don't know this man. That's just a DVD. But she got a hold of him. He came. In the end, this man was born again on death row and became a pastor. And when he it's time to be executed, the pastor said, before, as you're dying, tell me, is God's grace enough? And while he was dying, when they flipped the switch or did the injection, however they did it, the serial killer smiled really big, put 2 thumbs up, and then he was with the Lord in heaven. And in that instance, I thought, if there's justice and if these pedophiles are executed, I'm okay with forgiving them. And I did. And the freedom hit. And I felt like there's a scripture, I've been set free like a bird out of the fowler snare. I could see myself flying up in the air and I was free. And I forgave every pedophile, every medical employee, every government employee, every last one of them. And I had been free to this day from all of them. All of them.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And I love how you said in the beginning that forgiveness isn't for another person. It's not to validate what somebody did. It's not to all of a sudden have a relationship with them and that you need to spend time with them. It's literally a cord that connects you to somebody who doesn't have that same connection to you. You know, you think about abusers, people that do harm, they abuse and then go about their day. They're not thinking about the person that they abuse. They're thinking about the next thing that they can do and get away with. They're very self-centered. They're psychopaths. They don't have emotions to other people. But when you're not a psychopath and you're being abused by one, you're very emotional towards them, and that can be very draining to you on top of what they're already taking. You're giving even more by investing that energy into them and thinking about them all the time and carrying the emotions that they gave you. So it literally is like you have a cord that's still attached to them that they're not reciprocating back. It's not an energy that they're giving back to you in a good way. They're still just sucking your energy and you're just giving it to them. So to me, I picture forgiveness exactly how you said. It's just cutting that and saying, I'm not going to give you any of my energy anymore. I don't agree with what you did. I don't want anything to do with you anymore. But you're not worth this energy, even if it's just a little string of my energy. You're still harvesting it and taking it, and you're not giving me any of that back. You don't even, abusers don't even think about their victims in that way, and so they're taking still. And even after the fact, even if you still don't even talk to them, they're still getting your energy because you're giving it to them, and it just feeds them even more. It gives them even more power where you can take that back and say, no, this is mine. I'm going to take that energy back. That string of energy that I was giving you is mine. I'm not going to give it to you anymore. And, that's that. It really is a gift that you give yourself. It's not a gift. Forgiveness isn't, sometimes it can be a gift. If it's somebody that you love, you can gift them with forgiveness, and it can be like a reciprocity of, I'm sorry, I forgive you, but with a psychopath, with somebody who's never going to come to terms and, say they're sorry, forgiveness becomes a gift for you. Forgiveness can mean different things in different situations. And I think a lot of survivors struggle with that because they think that it's giving power to agreeing with what the abuser did, that it's doing an injustice to the other victims. They feel guilt for giving when in fact it's a gift that you give yourself. It's not something that you should feel guilty about giving to somebody else. It's something that you give you at the end of the day when you're dealing with these, psychopathic personality types.
Exactly. And I love how you explain this too. I've talked with other survivors. So this comes from my Christian faith. And I've talked to other survivors who are maybe Jewish or of a different faith or no faith. And they cannot grasp the word forgiveness or why it's important
Yeah,
because they're so angry at the perpetrators, and rightly so. I mean, that's understandable.
totally.
Whenever I describe it as freedom, everybody gets freedom. And that this is the letting go and the releasing the energetic ties that bind, so I can be free, and everybody can understand freedom. And that's the importance of it. And it gets back to Gracie
Oh,
was
Gracie.
what she does is she cuddles and she gets on my notes, and then yeah, yeah. So she's yeah. So forgiveness.
I love that. That's a really important topic. I'm always grateful whenever it comes up, and it's important for people to hear that because they might not realize the different ways that word can apply to different people, and that it's not something that means that you agree. It's not something that means that you want a relationship or that you're, you know, uh, sort of giving a pass to somebody who doesn't deserve one. It's really just cutting off the energy that you're still giving to somebody who's still able to harvest it, and not and doing it in a selfish way where there's not an I'm sorry back, there's no reciprocity back. It's still just an energy that you're feeding somebody who doesn't deserve it, when you could take that and, use it for anything else, especially healing, to not have that energetic bond still with somebody.
So I love that. More healing. Let me talk about the last thing
Yeah.
about healing, but this is the physical. So our bodies have been physically harmed. I mean, that's a fact. They've been physically harmed. And in 2022, I was at my makeup mirror again. Amazing things happen at my makeup mirror. But I was sitting there and I heard, I'm going to have Gracie fur now. It's kind of flying up here. Uh, I heard the audible voice of God, and God can speak any way he wants to. Normally it's spirit to spirit or billboards or license plates or whatever. But this was the audible voice of God. And he said, like a commander in chief, I want my people healed. It's exactly what he said. And I've never been in the military, but if I would have been, I'd have done this. And God speaks so loving and caring, and he can sound like a commander in chief if he wants. I just not heard that before. But I knew he was serious. I mean, I knew he was as serious gets. And I was like, yes. And he told me to look into non-invasive healing modalities. That's what he called it. Now, I'd never said those words together before because I'm not, I'm a human resource consultant. Wasn't, I'm not a healthcare person. But now I feel like I am, but I wasn't then. And so I thought, okay, non-invasive healing modalities. Well, part of what I do in my day job is I conduct legal research all the time because I'm the first line of defense before I get called whenever things get really bad in companies, and I'm the first line of defense for attorneys. So I'm constantly researching and interpreting the law. I'm not an attorney. I teach a 3-day legal class, but I research. So I started researching what are non-invasive healing modalities. And when I looked into that, and the Lord was talking to me about it, his concept was the little ones have been invaded enough. We're not going to do that anymore. Western healthcare does more harm than good in these cases, and we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to go to natural, non-invasive healing modalities. So I started researching. I looked into light, and I looked into frequency. So I have music. So I learned about the hertzes. See, I didn't know any of this. And this is healing now at a physical level. So this was my next step. I had done everything I just mentioned, the spiritual, the mental. So now we're going physical. And so I got different hertz music. I'll still do that to this day and find different frequencies and soothing depending upon what I need. So I did that. Then I looked into teas and I got organic teas, and that has been super helpful. You'll see me everywhere I'm at, every podcast, every show. I'm constantly drinking teas because there are all kinds. And I go organic. So I started learning even more about organic. And then he told me that he wanted me to make tinctures. Well, I'd never said that word before. The little girl in me thinks that's a fun word to say, tinctures, because
It is
but
whimsical.
yeah, yeah. I didn't even know what that was. And so he told me to have a garden. I never thought about doing a garden before. And he said, get raised garden beds, do a garden. He said, I want you to buy the best of the best of the best, the best soil, the best compost, the best everything, the best of the best. And so I did. And then I learned how to do this. And then I planted seeds to make herbs. And then the next thing I knew, so I now have 44 quarts of tinctures in a closet. And these replace all over the counter medications. And I just because the Lord told me to. And now, if I have like a cold or something like that, I'll take a tincture before I'll take anything over the counter because when I was little, they experimented on me and the other children to develop big pharma. So I don't want any part of that as much as I can. And the things that are in our over-the-counter medications are very, very harmful intentionally. There are people that, they'll intentionally put cancer. They did that in some of the acid reflux over-the-counter pills. And so you just have to, they put it in COVID. We all are aware of what so anyway, it's in the over-the-counter stuff too. So that's another example, non-invasive healing modalities. And I started looking more into light, so I stopped wearing sunglasses as much as possible, and anything that I could to heal my body. Then in 2024, I was lifting weights in my garage. This was January of last year, and I was listening to a podcast, and they were talking about LifeWave. And I'd heard about that before, but just for some reason I didn't realize there were no drugs or chemicals in it. I didn't realize it was light and frequency therapy. I thought it was one of those patches that has drugs and chemicals in it, which meant it was not a non-invasive healing modality. Well, I was getting ready to turn the podcast, and God said, drop everything and listen to this. So I did. I was lifting weights, so he wanted my focus. So I dropped the weights, listen. And it was the inventor of LifeWave. His name is David Schmidt. And since then, I've learned a lot about him. But that specific show, he was talking about the COVID and the COVID vax. And he said that the X39 product would turn around all damage from the COVID vax and protect you from shedding. Well, at that time, I was really concerned about shedding because, my personal trainer was vaxxed and she was around me. I was concerned about shedding. And so he gave me Psalm 18 and Psalm 120, which basically say, it, he told me, I will restore the dew of your youth, which means I've been harmed beginning in the womb from the cellular level, beginning in the womb. And I know my cells are damaged. I've known that all my life, head to toe. I know I'm severely damaged. And my therapist had always said, um, so just as a side note, Gracie's here trying to eat my buttons. I'm getting ready to start a children's series of books called, one of them is going to be Don't Eat the Buttons.
Oh,
And the reason why is Gracie has pica. She has anxiety, an anxiety disorder, because she was separated from her mother too soon.
oh,
And when that happens with cats, they eat everything. Walmart sacks. She's tried to eat ammo. She's eaten shirts. She eats, you name it, she'll eat it. So I have to be very careful around the house. Well, she eats buttons, and it's so dysfunctional, but she can't help it. And to me, that describes anxiety. Whenever she's anxious because I'm not petting her enough, so when she's anxious, she eats buttons. So to me, that's what people with anxiety do without the proper tools. It's like, please don't eat the buttons. Let's give you something that actually works. So anyway, back to life. He told me that it would restore my cells. And I had no idea what he was talking about. But again, I've told you several stories. If he suggests something, I'm all on board. And he also told me it would restore the dew of my youth. Well, I didn't know that for every 6 weeks I was on LifeWave, I would reverse age by 8 weeks. I had no idea what he was talking about. And then he said he would bless me if I would share it. And so I thought, okay. So he told me to order the patches, and I did. And um, 3 days later, well, the first day I had long COVID and it was gone. It took it. So what the patches are, they there's a couple products, the X39 and the Celergize together. They activate your stem cells. And at conception, our very first cell was a stem cell, and it made all of us. And what Western medicine has withheld from us is our stem cells are our repair cells.
mm,
And if they made us, they can fix us. And we've never been taught this. We've been taught, take a drug, cut it out. Like my stories before with the hearing and the blindness, and but that's not the way our bodies were meant to heal themselves. And they're just so badly damaged from food, water, air, et cetera, that our stem cells don't work. So the patches, the technology uses your own body to regenerate your stem cells, and your stem cells assess you head to toe, and they're like, okay, what's going to harm Lynn the worst first? We're going to repair that, and then they've got a priority order, and they do what they want to do. No drugs, no chemicals. So day one, I had long COVID and I didn't know it, and it was in my lungs. And when I was on the patches, I went out to run and I could breathe. And I had no idea how poorly I was breathing until I could breathe. So that was gone. Day three, I was driving in my car, and all of a sudden, the feelings of hope and happiness just overwhelmed me. Now, never in my life have I ever, ever, ever. When I was little, not only did I not cry, but I stopped feeling, because you can't feel and survive. The children who felt died. And I've been working for years on feelings, like how to feel and what's this feeling. And I'd never had good feelings like that, really big. And it was so amazing, Emma. I pulled my car over and I sat there for 30 minutes and I just felt. I just felt, because I couldn't do that before. And I thought, what is this? What is happening? And then I started noticing. So with PTSD and anxiety, and your audience will understand this, on the Richter scale of like stress at a 10 point, we live at like an 8, because you're constantly wired in fight or flight. You're ready to get eaten by that, alligator or whatever. I mean, it's just how you live from the trauma. And so we're always there. So I would describe it in my world. If I had a bill go up by $5, it was the end of the world as I knew it because I was already an 8 and the stress would take me off the chart and out in space. I couldn't function. It could wreck a whole day. It was debilitating. And, and these things are part of life. They happen all the time. Well, I started noticing that first month that didn't happen anymore. A problem was a problem. If there's a normal person, their bill increases $5, they think, okay, well, I can either pay it or I can call to see if I can reduce it. And then they do it and they just move on. And all of a sudden, that's how I was reacting to problems. I wasn't going off the Richter scale. I had this clarity of thought. I could see a problem, I could solve a problem, I could react. What I didn't know was my stem cells were calming down my central nervous system. So it wasn't in fight or flight anymore. And my brain, when you have trauma, your synapses don't hit. And so you don't have good positive emotions and feelings. So my neurotransmitters, they were hitting again. So everything was getting rewired and calmed down, and the cortisol levels were decreasing, and the stress and anxiety was decreasing. And it decreased my PTSD and anxiety by 70% during the first month. And that's been huge. And so far, I can't make guarantees, of course, or promises, but 100% of the people who I've helped with this have had relief from their PTSD and anxiety the very first month. And it's like compound interest in a bank. It just gets better and better and better. It would have been impossible. In January, that same month, was when God told me that I was well enough to speak. It was time to speak. And it would be impossible to have started this journey and given my testimony as a podcaster and been on podcasts without this. And it's because of the stem cells. It's increased the stem cells and made physiologically everything in my body, and it's head to toe. I used to have IBS from all this anxiety. I don't anymore. I used to need to wear glasses all the time. I don't anymore. The fat has melted off. It's a head to toe. It will. I have people accuse me of getting Botox. I haven't. And it's amazing. But for today's conversation, the biggest part has been the PTSD and anxiety.
This is really neat. So you mentioned it's a patch. How often do you have to put it on, and what is sort of the protocol? Is it sort of a slow release? You leave it on for a period of time and it injects through the skin transdermally, stem cells into the bloodstream?
So there's nothing transdermal.
Okay.
There's no drugs. There's no chemicals. It's a light and frequency therapy. So this is how it works. It looks like a Band-Aid. It looks like a round Band-Aid. And trying to see, I've got several on. Um, so it looks like this, just a flat
Take
Band-Aid.
this off real quick so we can see it.
Yeah, it's just,
Okay.
and then this white part in the center, it's it contains organic crystals, salts, sugars, and in a certain lattice-shaped structure that emits a frequency. So what happens is you put it on your skin, and the light in our body, it's a light and frequency therapy. The light in our body, we see that with like thermographies and different, where we see the colors. You know, if you're getting EKGs, you'll see the energy in your body. And so when the patch is put in place, the frequency tells the body what to repair, and then it allows our body, it takes the light in our body that normally comes out, the heat. Like when you wake up in the morning in bed, your sheets are warm because heat comes out of your body. It takes that and it refracts it back in, and then that in turn creates stem cells. There's over 200 patents for this. The vast majority will say how it creates stem cells, so it's patentable. But it's no drugs, no chemicals in it. It's our own body healing itself. It's a non-invasive healing modality, and head to toe. And what it does is it will go. So with me, it decided COVID was the first thing it had to repair that was going to harm me the worst first. the long COVID, my lungs. The second thing it decided needed fixed was his PTSD and anxiety. So it went for my central nervous system and my brain. And then it just kept going in priority order what needed to be fixed. And including fun things like removing sun damage from all the running and just head to toe. I had an injury when I was little where I was pushed down the stairs and had a traumatic injury in my bones and my shoulder, and that's been repaired. So it's head to toe. But for today's conversation, especially the PTSD and anxiety, is where this is going to help people.
This is interesting too, the aches and pains, energy, all the stuff that you said. And you really do look great. You're so youthful. So whether
Thank you.
it's because of this or not, you're definitely taking good care of yourself. And I know you're a weightlifter and marathoner. So I mean, there's so many different things that go into health, but I think that this is pretty interesting. And so if people were interested in this, you are actually an affiliate who people can purchase these through and from, right?
That's right. That's right. Because that's part of what God said was he would bless me if I would do this. So you can see these before and after results. Look how young these, so it's reverse age. For every 6 weeks you're on the product, you literally reverse age by 8 weeks.
Oh my God.
And you'll see people, the woman with the long blonde hair at the bottom in the middle, she had cancer and in the nose, and that all that whole face thing was from the radiation. And look what the patches did after 3 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
And then the guys with the bruises, I mean, it's amazing how it repairs. It's something that they have withheld from us, being able to know about, so that way we can get away from big pharma. And our bodies were meant to heal themselves. So yeah, there's testimonies. People can go there. There's links to click to purchase the products, and then I have a website that's at my qgrit.org website, or my Live Younger with Lynn. And there's people can click and place an order, or they can email me if they have questions, because it's pretty common for people to have questions like, what patches should I use? But you get a 30-month supply with your original question, and you wear them for 12 hours, and then you remove it and throw it away and wait 12 hours, and then you put on a fresh patch. And it's as simple as that. It's a wearable med bed. We've all been waiting for the med beds,
Yeah.
um, and this is it, because the med beds are going to heal us head to toe, and that's what this does. And I list on my website what each patch does, so people can look at that and what's in them, which I described. And so I provide a lot of information there for everyone about the patches.
And is there one type of patch or are there multiple different products that people can purchase through
And
you?
there's 10 patches
Cool.
all together, and each one does something different. Our X39 patch is the primary patch because it does a little bit of everything, because it's creating those stem cells. And then the other patches will have other things that they do. So that's a great close-up. Wow. So this lists in general, what the X39 does, and it reverse ages, and does anything that the body needs repaired. It will go down in priority order. One thing that the FDA came to LifeWave about a year ago, and they said that um, they didn't want the company to say the word stem cell anymore, because even though their patents said that that's what they did, because they only wanted big pharma to say it. But as long as I have certain terminology and things on the website, we're perfectly fine to be able to talk about it, because that's what the patches do. It's just interesting how much, we learned that with COVID too, how much big pharma is wanting to make their money. But the X39 will go in head to toe, and then the X49 is also a stem cell uh, regeneration patch. And I use that too, especially whenever I run, because it um, helps me build muscle. People will use it if they need help with their bones. People love the energy. It's great for all things heart. When you wear the X39 and the X49 together, it's you become a Faraday cage. So you get protected from EMF and Wi-Fi and all of those things.
Wow. And then there's
People love the energy. Yeah, the glutathione is a detox. So if people are wanting to detox, it boosts the glutathione level 300%. So I know people are, concerned about parasites and all kinds of things now. So that's a good patch for that. The carnosine is good for the brain and the heart, and stamina. And when you're on the patches, wounds heal 50% faster, which are some of the pictures that we're seeing too. The carnosine, I didn't list everything here, but it's also people use it with the eyes to improve their eye health. Like there's some conditions where people have to get shots in their eyes, and after using this patch, they can stop that. Um, the Eon patch is specifically anti-anxiety. So my two go-tos are the X39 for the stem cells and the Eon for the anti-anxiety. And the two of those together just knock it out of the park. And it's also an anti-inflammatory. So if people have inflammation, it'll help there. And then the energy is exactly what it says. It's going to increase energy. I have a lot of people who will sign up who have damage from the vaccine or long COVID, and they just have lost all energy. And so this will bring it back to them while their bodies heal with the X39. And the ice wave helps with pain. So anytime there's pain, you can put the ice wave on and the pain will stop. The SP6 is all things hormone. So if there's any problems with hormones, it's also really good for addictions too that I didn't list there. But in anything with your organs problems or anything with hormones, and Silent Nights is for sleep. And it also helps, a lot of these patches will help with problems with the children, the autism and things. The aloe vera is all things skin. And if people want to decalcify their pineal gland, which helps with the spiritual level, the aloe vera is a patch for that. And then it's also an antioxidant with oxidative stress. And then they do have some lotions too for the face, which is that aloe vera trio. So that's some lotions too.
how neat. I love like more holistic products because even if somebody say takes it and maybe they don't want to continue, there's no negative side effects. I love things that people can feel free to try, knowing that there's not going to be something bad that could happen to them, and that there's all these different ways that the product could potentially really, really help them, especially trauma survivors. And I love that you've taken something that I think is seems to be promoted a lot for youth, which can, be applied all different ways. Sometimes trauma and stress can like age us, but I love how you're helping survivors with this because a lot of the same reasons why we age, and a lot of the same things that affect our body in a way that can make us seem like we're aging before our time. A lot of that does come from stress and trauma and PTSD and trying to heal and not being able to, and if there's ways that products can help us get through that more without all the negative side effects of going and relying on big pharma, I think that's so wonderful. And I love that you've been championing this, and it's incredible to hear how it's affected you. The insane percentage of ways that this has helped you heal from PTSD. It's a huge testament to the product, and I'd be really curious for other people to connect with you and try it themselves and see if they can achieve, especially with other lifestyle changes, creating safety in your environment, maybe starting to exercise, maybe starting to eat and get sunshine during the day. I can only imagine how much more powerful something like this is on its own. And then paired with all the lifestyle changes and all the things that you do in your life to stay healthy, Lynn, the weightlifting and the marathoning and going outside and having a pet, I can only imagine how much it accelerates the good things that you're already doing. And obviously, like I said, you're so youthful and just absolutely beautiful and radiant. And it's neat to see all, to learn how you've done it to hear your secrets and that it's not getting all this plastic surgery and stuff, that you're taking these very holistic approaches. You're creating a med bed on your body right in your own home, and you're healing yourself from the inside out. You're taking time to go to a therapist, and you're exercising, and getting cuddles from your kitty. And it's wonderful to see how that's affected you and to learn your secrets, because I think people get the idea that it's not possible for them. When you're in that moment of despair, you feel like you can never get to the other side. And I think sometimes these things are easier than our minds and bodies would like us to think. Even though it's such hard work, it doesn't just require, we don't have to be on a pill forever or get all these surgeries. It can be hard work in our homes and creating these simple changes that can do a lot of good in our body and our mind, and affect us from the inside out and affect even our environments.
That's beautifully said. And the other thing that I want to share about this is we've been talking about safe spaces. So what starts happening is people will use, so I'm going to focus on the trauma, people with trauma, any type of trauma. So what happens is people will start using this, and like I mentioned, I can't promise, but so far, 100% of the people will have relief from, start getting relief from the PTSD and trauma. Well, the next thing that happens is because of that, so many people who buy the patches from me then with anxiety, they're more socially isolated because of this, and they start wanting to get out more. And because I help people through their journey just to make sure they get their desired results, whatever that is. So I stay with people. And so I'll watch them, and I'll watch them change. And I'll watch their faces. I have watched women go from um, ab their faces are just so sad and dark and upset to where they're glowing with life. I see them change before my eyes. And then they start getting out and being social. And then there's all kinds of training that I do and meetings that I have on Zoom and things like that for folks to get together. And the whole LifeWave does too. The team that we're on is very, very safe. It's a safe place. And we're very all focused on child trafficking, the whole team. And as a matter of fact, we have a lot of people on the team with boots on the ground who are helping this, and people who are contributing financially and their gifts and talents. As a matter of fact, the inventor, he's invented all kinds of things, but he made a drone that can go into a place where the children are being harmed and put the perpetrators to sleep so law enforcement can save the children.
Oh, wow. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
yeah. So LifeWave is very,
So it can be used for children. There's no negative side effects on anybody.
right. So this whole company is very much focused on humanity and helping. And our team, when I say our team, there's probably 750,000 people on it. But the primary focus when it comes to um, the humanitarian effort side is the children, the little ones, rescuing and the aftercare, because the patches can be used on the children too. But it's even more than that. There's a lot, more that needs to be done. But when I work with people and they get like me where they can come out from their social isolation and start looking around like, oh my goodness, there's life out here and there's people and maybe there's things I can do. Well, then they join the community where it's safe. This whole community's safe. And then they start interacting with each other and others. And the next thing I know, they're like, well, maybe I can share these patches with people too because they help me. Maybe I can, it's what we talked about earlier. Maybe I can help others, and then I can earn a little income too, because most survivors I work with, they're very financially in trouble. And they're like, well, then I can earn some income too. And then I can, so it's like we start with their mental and physical health, and then it evolves into this beautiful community who's connected by this product. I mean, this product connects people, and then they go and they help other people, and it's just been a beautiful thing. And I've had so many people attracted to me now. I have a whole community that we get together, and God's given most of these people a vision of like um, places for aftercare of the children. Just
Oh,
this is all over the nation, all over the world. And God's given them dreams like what's on my Q Grit website, the plan he gave me for aftercare. Well, I'm not the only one. And he's using this product to unite us all. It's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And I'll meet people and I'll be like, well, what's your dream? And one lady said, we want a Ponderosa where we can heal the children and the adults with trauma. And Ponderosa is an old movie, old like sitcom, where it's like a beautiful place in the middle of the woods where love abounds. And I mean, it's just, this is the world I live in now. And God is so good. He's drawing healers and people together with this technology. So it's amazing in itself. But even more than that, it's a beautiful, safe place.
I love that so much. And I love that for you. I love that you found something that works for you that is seems to really work for everybody that you've known that has been on it. And you've created a community around a cause that you're really passionate about that you can get everybody else on board with. You know, I really feel like this cause is the one thing where we can put all of our differences aside and say, okay, I understand that you're a political person and that you might not like me because of my political beliefs or my religious beliefs, but can we put that aside and come together for the children? Can we all agree that children are a priority and that it extends beyond our political beliefs, our religious beliefs, that we can all come together for that and for our own well-being, you know, and connect and put our resources together and help this cause that we can all agree on. You know, and I love how you've been able to do that through this product. I think that's really innovative and you know, I think that that's something we should all look into doing with the different products and projects and companies that we're around. You know, it really is the one thing that defies all different methods of division. It's the one movement the government will never give us, you know, but it's the one thing I think that we can all come together and agree on that we care about. And I think that there's so many different ways that we haven't even thought of yet that we can come together and help, you know, and this product seems like a really great way to do that. And I love that you've championed that and got other people on board. That's really, really neat.
No, you're welcome. And thank you. You're welcome. I I love your message because we, the people, can do this. We can lock arms together. We can stop this problem. We can eradicate it off the planet, and we can help the survivors protect the children and provide the aftercare that the children and adult survivors need at all levels. So that's why on my website, qgrit.org, I listed, briefly everything that helped me heal that I just mentioned. And thank you so much for the time you gave me to share today, because I love being able to expand on what's on my website because I listed these steps there so that people could go and take what they like and leave the rest. What resonates, I encourage you to do.
And this is qgrit.org. It's exactly how it sounds, but I'll have it in the show notes too if you guys are driving or maybe aren't in a place where you can remember if you're at work listening. But she does have the LifeWave wearable MedBed tab. What QGrit offers, you guys can scroll through her website. It's just a lot of different information on here. And then under the More tab is where some of the things are that she was just talking about. Let's Find Missing Kids, podcasts with the founder, so you guys can see what podcast Lynn has been on. Of course, donate. A lot of you guys ask how you guys can help. So many people have it in their heart to give. It makes us all feel good. But there's a lot of corruption out there. There's a lot of ways that people use money for bad, and we can oftentimes get sucked into doing that. So my advice always when people reach out saying, "How can I help? I have $5 or $10 or I want to donate, you know, a certain amount of money. How can I do it?" Go right to a survivor, go right to their website, go to their GoFundMe pages, go right to them and give to them directly because you're helping an actual survivor. You're not wondering where your money's going. And so I just want to encourage you guys. Most survivors don't ask for money, but a lot of you ask where you can give it, and so many survivors could use it for their missions. You know, a lot of times they're volunteering to do a lot of the work that they do, or they're making very, very little money off a book that's really cheap that they made, or you know, a, a platform that is compensating them like Rumble or something. You know, you don't make a lot of money doing this work, unfortunately. You know, it's not really supported in algorithms and it's really hard to kind of grow. So I would really encourage you guys, if you guys have it in your heart to give, go right to Lynn's website. There's a donate. You can connect with her here. So you guys can go to her. There's a segue from QGrit to get to the website for LifeWave, and you guys can go look more at the specific web page that she has. But also on QGrit, there is a contact us link. So if you guys are on here and maybe can't figure out how to get to the other page, just connect with her here and inquire about LifeWave. If that's something that you're interested in, I would encourage you to go right to her and help Lynn's business grow with this and, experience the benefits for yourself and give her feedback on what you're experiencing. And like she said, it could also be a way to make income for you if you're interested in joining her team. So I would love if you guys would connect with her on that and help support her, dig more into that, look at it. Go look at the website, look at all the research behind it, the patents, it's a pretty neat thing. And also the ways that she is suggesting that we help support survivors and in missing kids. If this is something that you guys could potentially help with as well, it's always good to connect. Again, this isn't something that's going to be handed to us. Nobody else is going to do this for us. We all have to come together and say, what can I contribute to this? Here's my piece of the puzzle. Who can I use this to benefit? And then who can I bring to benefit me, with whatever my vision is. So if you guys are aligned with Lynn's vision and helping survivors, if you guys are somebody that has a resource, or if you have a skill set that could help bring her vision to life, and if that's something you're interested in, please reach out. We really have to come together and do this ourselves. And a lot of us really want to help. A lot of us have incredible skills, talents, resources, but we're one person, and we're so much better together. And I love that Lynn's website promotes everybody coming together for this cause, and that, all the different ways in your life, Lynn, that you've helped foster different communities. Another one being your podcast, which I'd love for you to talk about too, because some people might not know that you have a podcast if it's their first time here. We didn't talk about it a lot. So I'd love for you to talk about that also. You're just a woman that has your hands in so many different things, and you have so many videos here. It's a wealth of information on your podcast page, which is the Lynne Scott Haggerman Show.
Yeah, so that's my that's my Rumble show. So I encourage everyone to join that and follow me. And I have all kinds, I'll do some solo shows. I have all kinds of guests. I started a YouTube channel probably 6 weeks ago called Lynne Scott Haggerman. And I'm trying to be careful there
Yeah.
because it seems like if you post too much about this topic, you'll be taken down. So I'm more careful there. And then something amazing that just happened, Emma, I want to say 4 weeks ago, Patriots Prayer Network asked me to do a regular show with them, and they have a reach of 1.5 million.
Amazing.
I know. So I started doing a show with them called Lynne Scott Haggerman Podcast with Patriots Prayer Network. And they asked me to do as many shows as I could. Currently, I'm doing 4 a week, and I'll probably go to 5. And yeah, but a reach of 1.5 million. And God told me a year before I started speaking, he said, Lynn, he said, I'm going to open doors and you just keep walking through them. So that's what I'm doing, Emma, including being on your beautiful show today.
We love having you on, and you're welcome on any time. You're a wealth of knowledge and have so much to offer us. We have a lot to learn from you, Lynn. And today's show is just filled. This is an episode I feel somebody could go back and listen to multiple times and learn different things every time that they listen to it. And so, as she said, you guys, she is on YouTube at Lynne Scott Haggerman. And you guys can just type that in and her name will pop up. But like I said, if you're not right at your desktop or you don't have your phone handy, if you're listening on headphones or in your car, just click on this episode in the show notes after you're done doing whatever you're doing. Go back to it, and I will have a hyperlink. You guys can just go in the show notes, click, and it'll take you to all these different websites. I'm also going to have her Rumble channel, which is where she is mostly. You guys can find all of her videos on there. I do the same thing. My Rumble channel has every single episode I've ever done. My YouTube has most of them, but some of them are not YouTube friendly, so I don't put them up there. Rumble is really a supportive platform for a lot of the stuff that we talk about. They don't censor. So you guys can find Lynn's full video library on here, and I would encourage you guys to do that. And then maybe, Lynn, you could send me the Patriot Prayer. Uh, is that what the channel is called? The
Called Patriots Prayer Network.
Patriots Prayer Network. Maybe you could send me that link and I'll put that in the show notes. People can tune into that weekly now as well. And of course, you guys, please share all of this information. Share Lynn's website with people that you think could benefit from it. If you know somebody who's tried everything, they're really struggling with PTSD, trauma, aches, pain, sleep, send them her website for her LifeWave. It could be a really helpful option potentially for that person. And they don't have to go to a doctor. It's a way that they can try something if, especially if, they've tried a lot of other things and it hasn't worked. Those are some of the best people to suggest some of these holistic things to. A lot of us are really brainwashed into the Western medicine model. And sometimes we only get out of it by trying everything and seeing it doesn't work. So if you're seeing somebody helpless, if you guys know of a survivor that this could benefit, please share the information. It helps so much. And of course, Lynn's website is just a wealth of knowledge for everything else. Please just go explore that, click all the different tabs, read the content that she has, watch the other podcasts that she's done herself on other people's platforms, as well as the ones that she's doing here on her website and on her show, the Scott Haggerman Show. And share those, put them on your social media. That's a way that if you can't donate financially, you guys can donate something with your time for free. Just click on any of these episodes and share it on your social media so it can be visible to other people and encourage people to go support, to follow, and to engage with her content. And Lynn, you are just a beautiful person. I love the story that you have, that it has this happy ending. I know it's a lifelong journey recovering from trauma, but the example that you are today, hearing where you came from, it's just so impossible to picture you being that person, to picture you putting up with anything. And of course, as a child, you're forced to, but I know a lot of these patterns, they can be really hard to break even as adults, to have those different patterns that we've been so used to, including carrying shame. So to see the miracle that you are, what you've survived as a child, but also what you've overcome as an adult and where you are today, if anybody doesn't believe in miracles, all they have to do is look at you to have that belief completely shattered. And so thank you for sharing your secrets today of what helped you heal, for creating all this content for us, for having that website that is just a huge wealth of knowledge, and for exposing the dark, but also shining a bright light on it so we can eradicate it, and giving people hope on the other side, which I know is your ultimate mission.
It is. I'm all about hope. And thank you so much for having me on again today. It's just been fun. I love these long interviews. It's a rare opportunity, and I love your platform. And thank you so much for having me on again.
It's an honor to have you, Lynn, and I can't wait to have you back. And
Yeah.
so for everybody listening again, go in the show notes, connect with both of us. I'll have all Lynn's information as well as mine. Reach out and connect with Lynn, even if you just want to offer her words of encouragement too. It's always nice for us to connect and support each other. But I'll have all her links below. Go support, connect, follow, subscribe, share all of her stuff. Share this episode if you found value. Go in the comments and lift her up. We check the comments, so give her some good feedback and share any questions that you guys had that we can ask her last time. Share what was valuable to you, and just engage. It helps us all with the algorithms whenever you guys help us, and we're so grateful for you guys. We could not at all do this without you. Without you guys, we'd just be speaking into a black abyss. So I can't thank you guys enough for supporting all these courageous warriors who come on and share all this information. So you guys, thank you so much for listening. God bless you all, and we will see you next time.